petals drift past the magnificent blue-spired cathedral of the temple. A jubilant crowd cheers for the one they believe will save the empire. Saint Beatrice of the Oracle, a beautiful blonde woman, is hailed as the one chosen by God. The crowd gossips hopefully, believing she will use her power to stop a disaster and revive the imperial Kyrex. An onlooker remarks on the Duchess of Cumble's efforts to make her the crown princess and the Duke's good fortune. Standing on a balcony, Beatrice is the subject of hushed whispers, wondering why she has never used her holy power. Armored knights stand watch, as the people resolve that they must simply trust Saint Beatrice. Beatrice maintains a serene facade, holding her holy staff before the adoring public. Lost in thought, Beatrice contemplates the weight of her title, a saint. An ancient oracle is recalled, prophesying a saintess would appear to prevent disaster and revive the empire with her holy power. Beatrice internally confesses her terrible secret. Though chosen, she couldn't use her power, so her father hid her away in the temple. She is terrified, convinced everyone will turn their backs on her if her powerlessness is discovered. A faint hope remained that by becoming a perfect saint, her holy power might finally bloom. A nun urges the Saintess to come inside and rest after praying late, but Beatrice declines, stating it's what she has to do. Beatrice forces a strained, weary smile, masking her inner turmoil. A nun announces that a letter has arrived for the Saintess. The letter is presented to a surprised Beatrice on the balcony. Beatrice is stunned to see the letters from her father, His Excellency the Duke. She trembles, realizing with a blush that her father hasn't written to her in 10 long years. The letter from her father addresses her as Lice, urgently summoning her to the Duke's residence for something important. A wide, joyful smile breaks across Lice's face. Lisa informs the nuns she must leave for the Duke's residence, and they bubble with excitement that he has finally called for her. A nun teases Lisa as she blushes with excitement, crying out in flustered joy. The nuns hurry her along, insisting there's no time to dawdle and get dressed up. An ornate, white and gold carriage pulls up to the gates of a grand ducal mansion. A maid in a black and white uniform bows low, formally welcoming Lady Lice. Having changed into a beautiful blue dress, Liesel asks where she can find her father. Lisa walks alone through a quiet, sun-drenched garden terrace. She feels uneasy, finding the lack of a proper reception strangely quiet. Hearing a laugh, she peeks around a pillar to see who it is. She sees her father, a blonde-haired man, smiling as he gently places a flower crown on a little black-haired girl. Lise watches in shock, realizing she has never seen her father smile like that before. She flashes back to her memories of a cold and strict father who never smiled, not at her or anyone else. Standing apart from the happy scene, Lice wonders who the mysterious child could be. The girl, with black obsidian hair and startling red eyes, suddenly looks up as if sensing she's being watched. A jolt of surprise runs through Lice. The little girl runs towards her, happily calling out, "Sister Beatrice!" to greet her. The girl grabs Lyra's arm, her cheerful expression twisting into a sudden, malicious smirk. "Kiak," the girl cries out, stumbling and falling dramatically to the ground. The young blonde man shouts the girl's name, "Lena!" as Lice flinches, completely bewildered. Her father rushes to Lena's side while her brother angrily accuses Beatrice, who can only stammer that she did nothing. Her father whirls around, his face contorted with rage as he screams her name, "Beatrice." He glares at her, his thoughts dark, noting this is her first visit home in 10 years. His anger boils as he internally accuses her of returning only to bully a stranger. Beatrice tries to protest her innocence, but her father furiously cuts her off, refusing to hear her excuses and saying she's never done anything right. "I don't want to hear it," he roars, grabbing her and yelling that this is the reason she was kicked out of the temple. Stunned, Beatrice asks what he means, insisting he called for her, but her brother intervenes, telling their father she doesn't know yet. Her brother smirks, doubting her ignorance and condescendingly questioning how the Saintess could be unaware of her own situation. With a cold, mocking look, the brother continues to taunt her about her supposed ignorance. Lena, sitting on the ground, innocently suggests Beatrice missed the news in her excitement, as a sinister power begins to glow from her hands. As holy power radiates from a smiling Lena, Beatrice's brother cruelly taunts her, stating this is a skill she could never possess. A flashback explains the lore of the Oracle Flower, the mystical bloom that chooses the Empire's saints, having selected Beatrice 10 years prior. The story continues that after a decade, a new flower blossomed, from which a new black-haired child emerged. This event was interpreted by the temple as the birth of the one true Saintess. The new Saintess, it is revealed, was a child with startling red eyes. Lena coldly informs a stunned Beatrice that she is no longer the Saintess. Beatrice's world shatters into pieces as she struggles to comprehend the news, questioning what it means that a flower bloomed again. She despairingly wonders what her 10 years of devotion meant, and questions Lena's new name, Lena Cumble. As her brother mockingly asks if she's still clueless, Lena proudly announces that she has officially become a member of the Cumble family. Her brother instructs Beatrice to treat Lena well, calling her a precious child. Lena puts on a sweet facade, demurely asking her sister Beatrice to take good care of her. Her innocence fades into a dark, shadowy expression as she internally thinks, really, a terrifyingly wide, malevolent grin spreads across Lena's face in the shadows. A jolt of fear runs through Beatrice as she recoils, questioning the holy power emanating from the girl. Sensing a profoundly evil energy, Beatrice wonders if everyone is truly deceived by Lena's act. Lena begins to cry, playing the victim by suggesting Beatrice dislikes her for being a humble orphan who is now her sister. Weeping, she twists the knife by accusing Beatrice of cruelty motivated by jealousy over the crown prince. As Beatrice asks what Kale has to do with this, her brother furiously shouts, "Stop it, Lice." He cruelly informs her that with her status gone, it's only natural that her marriage has been decided. A flashback begins, showing a younger Beatrice being asked if she's truly going to Atlanta. The young Beatrice apologizes to a sick boy named Kale, promising to pray for him while he tearfully makes her promise to return. Holding his hand, she makes a solemn promise to Kale. Back in the present, Beatrice is heartbroken, realizing the new flower means she must also break up with Kale. She resolves to go to Atlanta herself, but her father grabs her arm, stopping her. She turns to see her father holding the leash of a small white lamb. Finding the maid holding the lamb, Beatrice confusedly asks what she is doing. The maid explains that she decided to raise a lamb to provide healthy food for Lena. Beatrice is horrified to learn there is meat in Lena's diet, but the maid obliviously asks if there's a problem, stifling her shock. Beatrice quickly insists that there is no problem at all. Beatrice recalls a sacred taboo. A saintess eating meat will bring disaster to Atlanta, realizing that if Lena is real, this is forbidden. Determined to prevent catastrophe, she decides she must find Lena immediately and warn her. She bursts into a room only to stop short, crying out Lena as she finds the girl cutting flowers. Lena turns with an innocent smile, asking her sister why she looks so distressed. Beatrice confronts Lena, pointing out that a saintess doesn't cut flowers or eat meat, and that she must be careful before her coronation. Lena scoffs, condescendingly asking if Beatrice is being mean, simply because she is her senior. Beatrice is left speechless and flustered by the dismissive accusation. Lena's face darkens as she threatens Beatrice, sneering about her precarious position and asking if she's trying to lecture her. Panicked, Beatrice insists it's not like that, frantically warning that disaster will strike and people will be hurt if the taboo is broken. Beatrice continues her desperate plea, reiterating that breaking the taboo will bring disaster and harm to the people. Lena smirks, telling Beatrice to mind her own business and coolly stating she knows everything, including the disaster in Atlanta. Shocked that Lena knows, Beatrice pulls a sword on her, accusing her of not caring about the believers. Lena feigns confusion at the mention of believers and mockingly asks if Beatrice is trying to play the hero. As Beatrice hesitates, Lena raises a pair of scissors and snarls, "Suit yourself." With a furious scream to stay out of her way, Lena lunges at Beatrice with the scissors. Citing a Jeju ritual, Lena stabs toward Beatrice, who screams her name in terror. Blood splatters across the screen as the attack lands. Pat, her father, bursts into the room, demanding to know what the commotion is. The Duke and the maid stare in wide-eyed horror at the scene before them. The blood-stained scissors clatter onto the floor. Lena stands clutching a wound on her chest, looking at the kneeling Beatrice with feigned shock as she asks, "Older sister, why?" The Duke looks on in horror, crying out, "Lie!" then shouts, "Lina," as the girl collapses onto the floor. The Duke rushes to Lena's side, screaming for a doctor as Beatrice and the maid watch in frozen shock. Trembling, Beatrice covers her mouth in horror, her mind frantically rejecting the nightmare unfolding before her. A furious voice screams, "Beatrice!" causing her to flinch in terror. Her brother holds the unconscious Lena, his face a mask of rage as he asks his crazy sister what she has done. Beatrice stammers, trying desperately to explain to her father what happened with Lena. With tears streaming down her face, Beatrice reaches out, crying that she didn't do it. Her father's thoughts turn black with rage, concluding she's gone insane after losing everything and feeling pathetic for ever wasting money on her. Seething, her father declares that Beatrice Cumble is no longer a Cumble. He internally brands her a shame to the family, as she stands broken and weeping. Beatrice flashes back to her childhood struggles, recalling her unloved past, while a voice yells at foolish bastards to stop. In a past snowy landscape, knights marvel that His Excellency climbed the mountain with only one knight, as one points him out. As the Duke is announced to have returned, he is seen being supported by another man, both exhausted from their journey. The younger Duke and his companion share a weary, serious look after their ordeal in the mountains. In another memory, a young Beatrice watches as knights praise her father's humble sacrifice for them. The young, blonde girl smiles, understanding why the people of the land believe in and follow her father. A young Beatrice runs to greet her father, but he coldly asks who brought her all the way out there. The young Beatrice is reminded that a princess must choose a helpful husband, as her father dismissively tells a guard to speak with her. Peeking from a corner, the young, blushing Beatrice looks down, dejected by her father's coldness. Back in the present, Beatrice sits in a carriage, arriving at the outskirts of a town. She reflects on her painful past, always trying to meet her father's standards, only to be deemed a failure for her inability to use holy power. A thought bubble questions her identity as Saintess, over an image of Beatrice in a simple red hood. A man identified as Paladin Commander Balt Coble welcomes Lady Lyce back to Atlanta, expressing his relief and worry. Beatrice smiles warmly, thanking Balt and eagerly asking after the temple and its believers. Balt's expression turns grim as he reports the temple is fine but apologizes, struggling to find the right words. Beatrice reassures him she knows the oracle flower bloomed, and Balt confirms the temple is on lockdown, which is why she came. Balt earnestly declares his belief that Lady Lyce is the true Saintess of Atlanta, refusing to accept that she is fake. Beatrice sadly confesses her powerlessness, but Balt reveals there are growing suspicions that Lena's power is actually black magic. Shocked by the revelation, Beatrice listens as Balt recounts how others who claimed holy power were proven to be witches, asking if Lena is the same. He shows her a chilling document detailing a black magic ritual involving a crow, lamb's blood, and the sacrifice of a child. Beatrice recoils, horrified to recognize the instructions for a black magic circle and questioning why he has it. Balt reveals the instructions were confidentially given by Saintess Lena to perpetuate black magic, urging Beatrice, the true Saintess, to stop her. Beatrice asks how she can possibly fight back, and Balt suggests writing a letter to expose the Black Witch, but she doubts anyone will believe her. Balt confidently reassures her that the people of Atlanta will believe her because of all her hard work. He promises that her 10 years of sacrifice will not be wasted, stirring hope within Beatrice. Moved to tears, Beatrice realizes some people do recognize her devotion, as Balt informs her Lena's coronation is in a few days. A vision appears of Lena in a resplendent coronation gown, looking beatific and pure. Balt takes her hand, asking her to stay and watch over him, vowing that together they will protect the believers of Atlanta. Filled with new resolve, Beatrice agrees, affirming their shared mission. The scene shifts to a vast, ornate, and empty cathedral prepared for the coronation ceremony. The massive doors to the cathedral swing open dramatically. An eager crowd gasps in awe, craning their necks to see the new Saintess. The veiled Saintess appears, and the crowd murmurs about her elegance, excited to finally see the real one. A priestess solemnly invites the Saintess to approach the altar. Clang. Suddenly, armored knights begin to move in with purpose. A man points an accusing finger at the veiled figure, shouting for the guards to catch that fake saint. The accuser loudly charges her with conspiracy, murder, and black magic, ordering her detention as she stumbles back in shock. An armored hand roughly seizes the shoulder of the veiled Saintess. Her veil is ripped away, revealing a stunned Beatrice, a holy light unexpectedly glowing around her head. A man, accompanied by Lena, informs the knight that they already have all the evidence they need. The woman in the purple dress looks down, confused, as Balt puts a hand on her shoulder and she questions his presence. In a flashback, Balt plans with Beatrice, concluding Lena will use black magic at the ceremony and that it's too late to accuse her without proof, vowing to find evidence. Balt expresses his doubt that anyone will believe them, since Lena is also seen as a saintess with an upcoming coronation. Beatrice asks what to do, and Balt proposes a plan. Stop Lena's magic by drugging her to sleep beforehand, as a memory of a sleeping Lena appears. Balt asks Ms. Lice to take his place at the coronation ceremony while he focuses on stopping the black magic. Back in the present, the blonde woman reels in shock, wondering why Lord Balt would betray her. Standing beside Lena, who is disguised as Beatrice, Balt publicly accuses Beatrice Cumble of being a black witch planning to sacrifice the attendees after kidnapping the real Saintess. Beatrice confronts Balt, asking what he's talking about since he asked for her help, but he dismisses her and brandishes evidence against her. In a flashback, Beatrice realizes that the letter she wrote to protect herself from black magic was doctored, with a forged letter added on top in her handwriting. Balt continues his public condemnation, claiming the document proves Beatrice used black magic for self-interest and even tried to murder Saintess Lena. The crowd murmurs in horror, noting a large wound on Saintess Lena's arm and wondering if Beatrice attacked her. A distraught Beatrice desperately pleads with the crowd not to be fooled, insisting she's not a black wizard and that Lena and Balta framed her. A guard tells Beatrice that she's cornered, as they have all the evidence they need, leaving her in stunned disbelief. The accuser formally charges her with being a black magician and ordering the murder of Saintess Lena Cumble, a charge she frantically denies. A nobleman in the crowd adds that she sent secret letters to her followers to try and flood Atlanta, while Lena smirks triumphantly. Beatrice is sentenced to death, collapsing to her knees in despair as thorny vines seem to ensnare her. An angry mob gathers on a cliff, demanding her death and screaming for the crazy Saint Beatrice to be punished. As the execution of which Beatrice is announced, she stands alone and veiled at the edge of a cliff. A rock flies through the air and strikes Beatrice, drawing blood as she's knocked back by the impact. The villagers, led by a crying boy, shout in rage, accusing her of having tricked them all. A knight raises his sword to execute the fallen and bloodied Beatrice. Thrown to the ground with her hands bound, Beatrice endures the brutal punishment. Gagged and weeping, Beatrice thinks that she was actually trying to save them all. She desperately pleads for someone in the hateful crowd to believe her. Through her tears, the gagged Beatrice recognizes someone in the crowd with a shocked, "You?" Her eyes fall on Lena, who covers her mouth in feigned horror, and Beatrice screams her name in her mind. As Lena maintains her false shock, Beatrice's thoughts rage that Lena has taken everything from her. Beatrice remembers her fiancé, a romantic moment, now a painful memory of what was stolen. She thinks of the family she has lost, her stern father and her furious brother. She mourns the 10 years of her life dedicated to a role that has now led to her doom. With a final defiant glare, Beatrice bitterly wonders how Lena could have orchestrated this, as if the world was made just for her. Elsewhere, Lena feigns concern, telling a knight she wants to give her sister time to repent, while the knight warns her that Beatrice is a black magician. A voice screams for Lena to stay away as someone stops in their tracks. Lena appears, calling innocently to Sister Beatrice, but her sweet expression warps into a demonic, blood-splattered grin as she thinks, "You idiot." Beatrice defiantly denies ever using black magic, accusing Lena of being the true culprit, but Lena simply asks if she's still suspicious. Lena's face twists into a horrifyingly wide, malevolent smile, her eyes glowing with evil intent. As a bright light erupts from a defiant Beatrice, Lena gleefully confirms Beatrice's accusations. With a crazed expression, Lena cruelly taunts Beatrice about her impending death and the likely death of her family, shocking Beatrice. Beatrice is horrified, realizing the death sentence is absolute for black magic, as a guard is seen running and calling for Lady Lena. A knight restrains Beatrice while Lena leans in and whispers a horrifying promise to kill her, her family, and all the believers to become the main character. Beatrice's eye widens in sheer, unadulterated terror at Lena's monstrous confession. In a strange vision, Lena is struck by a blue force, crying out in pain as onlookers shout her name. Feigning disappointment, Lena tells the knight her sister is not ready to repent and orders him to proceed with the execution, causing Beatrice to scream her name. Lena grins with pure, triumphant evil framed by a throne of gore and skulls, revealing her monstrous true nature. In her final moments, Beatrice laments that her family will die and wonders if a different choice could have saved them. She reflects on a life spent trying to please everyone, just as she's pushed from the cliff. Sinking into dark water, Beatrice bitterly regrets having been so frustratingly kind and naive her whole life. As she drowns, she makes a new resolve. If she lives again, she will not be a good person. Reaching out from the depths, she decides she won't care if people judge her in her next life. Her eyes snap open, wide and filled with renewed purpose, as white feathers float around her. A blonde girl in a blue dress jolts awake in a luxurious bed, looking completely bewildered. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she covers her mouth, realizing with a shock, "I'm alive." Looking around the opulent room, she wonders in confusion if this is her own room. Now your family's gonna die too. Filled with sudden panic, the blonde girl leaps from her bed, determined to find her family and startling a nearby maid. She runs desperately toward the grand doors, thinking of her brother and her father. She freezes in the hallway as her maid asks what she is doing and if she's all right. The girl stares at her own small, youthful hands, completely baffled. Overwhelmed by her surroundings, she anxiously questions how this could have happened. Seeing her younger self in a reflection, she wonders if this is a dream or what happens after death. The concerned maid offers to call a doctor, but the girl urgently asks what year it is. As the maid stammers in confusion, the girl presses on, asking how old she is. The maid confirms she is 10 years old, sending the girl into a panicked spiral as she frantically asks about Atlanta and her father. The maid seems confused, asking why she would be in Atlanta, and the girl is stunned by her response. The maid asks to borrow something for a moment, her expression turning serious. Holding a letter, the maid explains it's from her older brother's academy, likely about the end of the semester. The blonde girl stares, a sudden realization dawning on her. The scene shifts to a beautiful building, adorned with cherry blossoms in full bloom. A vision appears of an older, serene Beatrice, dressed in a magnificent gown, her hands clasped in prayer. With renewed determination, she realizes that the terrible future hasn't happened yet. She remembers that in the winter of her 10th year, the oracle flower chose her as the Saintess. But a painful memory follows. Despite being chosen, she was unable to use holy power. In a flashback, her father's words echo, promising that becoming the perfect Saintess Beatrice would grant her holy power and earn his love. The memory continues, revealing she was destined to become a sacrificial saint, devoted to the temple and its followers. An image of her as a saintess, bound in chains, shows she considered them more important than her own life. The illusion of her past shatters as she bitterly recalls it was all for nothing, because they all died anyway. She confirms she has returned 10 years into the past, to a body that hasn't received an oracle, but is certain this is real. Now in a pink dress with pigtails, she resolves to find Lena and stop the future, but despairs at what she can do in a child's body. A maid gleefully shows off her new cutesy appearance, complete with unicorns and rainbows, much to her internal horror. She inwardly despises the childish and uncomfortable dress she's been forced into. The maid fawns over her, declaring she is the only one fit to be crown princess, and that His Highness Kale will surely fall in love with her. Beatrice sighs with disdain, thinking that none of these frilly dresses are to her liking. She reflects on her past life, remembering she was once the childhood friend of Crown Prince Kale. A memory surfaces of her becoming friends with the young boy under a willow tree, unaware of his amazing true identity. She recalls how her father saw her friendship with the prince as a political opportunity, plotting to make her the crown princess. A vision of her in an elegant coral dress represents the future her father planned for her. An impatient woman with brown hair, dressed in dark blue, asks why the miss isn't ready yet. The woman, her nanny, scolds her for looking at decorations instead of studying, threatening another scolding from the duke. A stern, blonde-haired man appears, his arms crossed in disapproval. He angrily shouts, "Beatrice!" as the nanny smirks cruelly behind him. In a flashback, a young Beatrice accuses her nanny of ruining her book, explaining why she reported it to the butler. Her father furiously chastises her, blaming her reading for poor grades, and questioning if that behavior is fitting for a future crown princess. Beatrice tries to argue that it was the nanny's fault, but her father silences her, bringing up her bad exam scores. He forbids her from reading until she proves her worth, leaving her dejected as a maid watches with pity. The servants whisper that Beatrice's meager meal is the nanny's doing, admitting they are too afraid of being fired to intervene. A lonely Beatrice looks down, sadly, surrounded by a motif of wilting blue roses. Clenching her fists, she makes a fiery vow. She will never go back to the way things were. With newfound defiance, she forcefully slaps the nanny's hand away. The nanny recoils in shock, demanding to know what she is doing and accusing her of forgetting her manners. The nanny furiously scolds Beatrice, calling the future crown princess lazy and asking if she's half asleep. Stunned by Beatrice's defiance, the nanny stops short, wondering why she is raising her hand. Beatrice stares back coolly as the nanny accuses her, asking if she's thinking of slapping her. The nanny nervously stammers, thinking that Beatrice used to be timid and now questions if she is rebelling or has eaten something wrong. The nanny puffs up with authority, declaring she is the Cumble family's nanny and is in charge of Beatrice's education. Beatrice clenches her fist, defiantly asking if the nanny is saying she isn't even allowed to talk back. With a spark of defiance, Beatrice glares, ready for the confrontation. The nanny sneers, mocking Beatrice's poor grades and lack of self-awareness, while Beatrice begins to formulate a plan. Beatrice challenges the nanny directly, asking what she will do if she proves she doesn't need her education. The nanny seethes, calling Beatrice a bitch before striking a deal. She'll stop educating her if Beatrice proves she's capable, but warns her to be prepared if she fails, while Beatrice resolves to get rid of anyone in her way. Beatrice coolly accepts the terms, even welcoming punishment, and dismisses the nanny's role, leaving the woman baffled. Beatrice calmly walks away, questioning if it's truly a loss to be deemed unnecessary as she reiterates her challenge. With a cold and determined expression, Beatrice looks ahead, her new resolve unshaken. The aide with the scar reports to the Duke that his daughter wants to fire the nanny and forego her education. Her father, the Duke, scoffs at the report, questioning what she means by a princess not needing an education. The Duke considers his daughter's plan to call in a tutor, wondering what she could be thinking. He smirks, concluding that Beatrice has finally resolved to seriously pursue becoming the crown princess. Deciding he has to see this for himself, the Duke rises to go check on her, his aide trailing behind. Doorway, the Duke is visibly impressed, admitting that his daughter is amazing. A flustered tutor with glasses praises Beatrice's incredible growth in such a short time, calling her a genius. The formerly smug nanny watches in disbelief, shocked that a 10-year-old can be so smart. The tutor declares that Beatrice has the skill to become a great scholar, as she calmly sips her tea. Beatrice's eyes narrow with intent as she thinks about her next step, telling His Excellency, the Duke. The tutor presents a paper to Beatrice, who numbly acknowledges her success. The tutor stands triumphantly before a desk piled high with books, having completed her assessment. Beatrice formally dismisses the nanny, coldly stating that her education is no longer needed and ordering her to leave the mansion. The nanny furiously argues that the Duke entrusted her with this role and threatens to tell him, while Beatrice internally scoffs, realizing how pathetic the person she once feared truly is. Panicked, the nanny insists Beatrice is misunderstanding, claiming she has endured a lot until now. Beatrice stares her down, asserting that she is not a person who can be treated recklessly. The nanny breaks down, babbling hysterically that Beatrice isn't even recognized by the Duke and will never become crown princess. A thought bubble condemns the act of looking down on other people, surrounded by angry ink splatters. The Duke and his aide listen from the hallway. The aide remarks that the nanny is out of her mind, but the Duke silences him. Beatrice wonders why the nanny allied with her father just to bully her, while the Duke coldly asks if that was such a scandalous reason. The Duke praises Beatrice for her eloquent speaking as the nanny's hand trembles over a teapot. In a fit of desperate rage, the nanny decides to burn Beatrice's face to ruin her life, grabbing the hot teapot as Beatrice thinks, "Don't worry." Beatrice realizes the nanny is truly insane as the woman lunges with the teapot, screaming not to be messed with. The Duke's aide shouts, "Stop!" as he and the Duke witness the nanny's violent attack. The nanny freezes, shocked by the Duke's sudden appearance, and stammers that Beatrice refused her education. Enraged, the Duke recalls his aide Gaston and thinks about what he did to those who scorned him before coldly ordering the nanny to be dragged out and have boiling water given to her. The nanny is dragged away by a guard, screaming for the Duke to forgive her. She continues to scream that the lady is lying and begs the Duke to believe her, while Beatrice watches her downfall. The Duke turns his attention to Beatrice, asking her to come out so they can talk. Beatrice reflects that her education at home was nothing compared to the harsher training she endured as a Saintess in Atlanta. She admits to herself that having tea with her father now feels more difficult than passing any exam. The Duke instructs an elderly butler to have the wagon prepared for his immediate departure. Lost in thought, the Duke rests his chin on his hand, surrounded by a motif of blooming roses. Beatrice remembers her past life, how she always dreamed of returning to the Duke's house to be loved, as if it were her only purpose. Standing on the balcony, Beatrice reflects on her first victory, sending out the nanny. Her father approaches and tells her, "Good job," adding that she will be the crown princess and shouldn't bow to such an extent. Beatrice looks up at her father with wide, surprised eyes, taken aback by his praise. A memory flashes through Beatrice's mind, where she desperately tried to tell her father she never wanted to be the crown princess. Back in the present, her father apologizes, promising to listen to anything she wants. Flustered, Beatrice thinks about what she truly wants, realizing she has one last thing to say to him. Her innermost desires surface, rejecting the crown and yearning to live a life of her own choosing. Gathering all her courage, Beatrice looks at her father and declares that she does not want to become the crown princess. She continues, explaining that she wants to be herself in the future as her father listens with a stern expression. A wave of hope washes over Beatrice as she thinks she finally got through to him, only for that hope to instantly shatter. The painful memory of her past attempt resurfaces, her father coldly questioning why she would reject the title. In her memory, her father devalues her entirely, stating her only worth is as a crown princess and that she is just a tool for the family. Her father's voice pulls her back to the present as he admits with a somber look, "I got it wrong." Beatrice puts on a bright smile, telling herself it was foolish to have expected anything different. She accepts that she is still young and powerless, needing to rely on her father's position as the Duke of Cumble until she is an adult. With a cheerful expression, she reaffirms her new plan, deciding it's the only thing she can do. Her father remains silent, his expression unreadable as he watches her. Beatrice cheerfully changes her tune, asking for the key to the safe so she can experience spending a lot of money to become crown princess. Her father and his red-haired aide, Gaston, watch her, the Duke quietly contemplating her sudden shift in attitude. The Duke informs her that he must leave for a few days and instructs her to behave, to which she obediently agrees. As she walks away, Beatrice internally vows to play along and do whatever her father wants, even if it means becoming the crown princess for now. The aide with the scar asks if she plans to act immediately, and Beatrice confirms she does. Standing beside the aide, Beatrice declares her intention to enjoy the power of a princess before leaving, vowing to start right now. The scene shifts to a hand carefully writing a letter with an ornate black feather quill. As the letter is finished, she silently wishes that the recipient will come this time. In a darkened room, the back of a young, blonde-haired man is seen as he looks toward a window. A view from outside reveals the young, blonde-haired man in a priest's collar, looking out the sunlit window. Beatrice stands before a grand, ornate door, wondering aloud how much money she can spend there. The red-haired aide laughs, remarking on her youth, and generously offers to buy her anything she wants. Beatrice internally scoffs, thinking that he misunderstands. She isn't seeking extravagance, but untraceable cash. She analyzes the situation, realizing that since her father gave his attendant the key, her spending limit depends entirely on the man's judgment. Noting his calloused hands and sharp eyes, she deduces that he is not a mere attendant, but a former knight. She recalls her time in the temple, where many ex-knights who survived a terrible conquest came seeking solace. A memory of a golden cross flashes as she remembers a key detail the former knights had in common. Beatrice considers that her father also fought in that terrible war, and she wishes to honor the souls of the fallen. Knowing her father doesn't trust the temple with donations, she proposes to secretly make one on his behalf. The aide is surprised, noting the Duke's mistrust, but admiring the young lady's thoughtful nature. Deeply moved by her words, the aide thinks to himself that this is what a true Saintess would say. Beatrice calmly states, all right, her plan having worked. The aide bows respectfully, hand over his heart, and agrees to prepare for her request. He presents her with an ornate, golden, cross-shaped key, telling her to do as she wishes. Beatrice accepts the key, confirming her acceptance with a simple, yeah. Holding the key, she thinks about the donation for the victims, revealing her true intention. The money will go to the Dark Guild, not the temple. She scoffs at the thought of giving money to the temple, doubting it would be used properly. She recalls her past as a Saintess, forced to be honorable by the most corrupt man in the temple, the high priest. Standing before a large door, she remembers how she foolishly trusted and followed the high priest, despite knowing his true nature. Holding the key, she reaffirms her decision, preferring to spend the money herself than let it fall into corrupt hands again. She stands triumphantly before a huge pile of gold coins, excited to see how much she can spend. She gazes in awe at the vast ducal treasury, overflowing with mountains of gold, jewels, and priceless artifacts. A frantic chibi-style maid named Kitty clings to Beatrice, crying that it's too dangerous to go out alone while Beatrice struggles to escape. Beatrice internally fumes, realizing Kitty caught her as she was trying to sneak out to the guild to buy information on Lena. She despairs, realizing it's impossible for a 10-year-old to go out alone and wishing she had a protector. A maid with brown hair suddenly appears, asking why she is leaving so abruptly, but Beatrice quickly denies it. The maid with brown hair, Kitty, notes the rumors that Beatrice has suddenly changed. Beatrice irritably turns away, telling Kitty to let her go if she's just gonna nag. Beatrice confronts Kitty, deducing she was surprised by the letter, but Kitty deflects, asking if Beatrice means when she came back. Kitty advises Beatrice not to be too disappointed. Kitty suggests that Master David is busy with his studies, prompting Beatrice to wonder if she thinks she's lonely because of her brother. A memory introduces Beatrice's older brother, David Cumble, noting they had little communication while he was at the academy. In a past life memory, Beatrice recalls how her brother seemed to prefer Lena over her. Beatrice tells Kitty she believes her brother liked Lena more, guessing it was because of her grades. With arms crossed, Beatrice ponders if she can successfully reconcile with her brother this time. A clattering sound draws Beatrice's attention to a carriage pulling up outside the window. Kitty and Beatrice peer outside, with Kitty remarking that she wasn't expecting any guests. Kitty rushes off, promising to find out who has arrived. Beatrice gazes thoughtfully, wondering if her brother David remembers the gift he once gave her. She touches her necklace, remembering the present her brother gave her on her 8th birthday. A sudden shout from outside demanding someone bring her out startles Beatrice, who wonders what is happening. Kitty returns in a panic, calling out to the lady as Beatrice asks what's wrong. A frantic Kitty explains the guests are from the academy and tries to rush Beatrice inside, leaving her confused. Kitty urgently pushes Beatrice, shouting, "Quick!" while a frustrated Beatrice demands to know what's going on. Kitty turns and yells at someone off-panel as Beatrice looks on in surprise. An unseen group confronts Beatrice, accusing her of running away, looking down on David, and being an arrogant little girl. A girl with light purple hair appears, confusedly asking what is happening and what it all means. Beatrice finds herself confronted by 3 angry youths in the grand hall. A young woman with long brown hair, Angela Bromgren, angrily accuses Beatrice of ignoring her own brother. A young man with glasses, Anton Elliott, questions if Beatrice thinks David is insignificant. Another young man, Victor Sossaman, accuses Beatrice of looking down on David while flattering the Duke. A bewildered, chibi-style Beatrice has no idea what they are all talking about. Standing before the trio, Beatrice silently questions if they truly believe she's disrespecting her brother. Beatrice vehemently denies ignoring her brother, but Angela retorts that all of David's letters and birthday gifts were sent back to the academy. Shocked, Beatrice insists she's never received a single thing from her brother. Looking at the commotion, Beatrice tries to piece together what happened. A man in a formal suit reacts with shock to the unfolding drama. Beatrice looks on in dawning horror, thinking, "No way?" Memory confirms her suspicion. Her nanny had always supervised her letters. Beatrice realizes the nanny's dismissal meant no one replied to David's letters, causing his friends to confront her, and internally scolds Kitty for not delivering them. Beatrice cries with frustration, realizing she never even got the first letter she saw, while Kitty panics beside her. Angela explains that families are invited to an annual academy event to see student achievements. Angela angrily reveals that David sent Beatrice invitations for 3 years, but she refused every time, leaving him all alone. As the group fumes that David is on her side despite their efforts, Beatrice quietly considers their misguided loyalty. The trio declares they won't stand for it and demand an apology from Beatrice on David's behalf. Beatrice observes that while they are ill-mannered, their deep care for her brother seems genuine. Accepting that it's her fault, Beatrice decides she must go there and asks how she should apologize. An unseen man coolly suggests she kiss the floor, leaving Beatrice stunned. Beatrice erupts in fury, thinking they dare to command a princess, and questioning if they understand the consequences. Enraged, Beatrice thinks that a kind heart can't be eaten and steels herself, remembering that the Cumble family bows to no one. A vision of an older David protecting Anton appears as a thought bubble declares that the Cumble family never bows to anyone. Suddenly, David appears, grabbing Anton by the collar and demanding to know who allowed them into his house, as Beatrice calls out, "Brother!" David furiously confronts his friends, demanding to know why they acted on their own when he never wanted this. A tearful Angela asks David why he's protecting a child who doesn't treat her family well. David states that their father recognized Beatrice, making her a member of the Cumble family far better than himself. Beatrice realizes David's misunderstanding, clarifying that their father has never truly acknowledged her. As Beatrice watches from a distance, David's friend Angela explains to him that he might have been all alone. A woman with olive green hair scolds David's friends, questioning if they wanted the Cumble family's reputation ruined by forcing a princess to kiss the floor, as Victor groans in dismay. David declares he will be prepared, but Beatrice interjects, vowing to her brother that she will uncover the root of this problem herself. With sparkling eyes, Beatrice strengthens her resolve, thinking she can do this for her brother. Crash! One of David's friends is sent tumbling to the ground. David turns his back on his friends, angrily banishing them from his sight until he says otherwise, while Beatrice watches in surprise. Turning to leave, David apologizes to Beatrice for his friend's behavior. Beatrice desperately calls out to David, begging him to wait as he walks away. The butler flinches as Beatrice's voice sternly calls out, "You there!" Beatrice confronts the nervous butler, demanding to know if he's the reason her brother's letters and gifts disappeared. The sweating butler confesses he only followed orders from the recently dismissed nanny, who told him to return the gifts. Beatrice glares, realizing with frustration that it was the nanny, not the butler, who sent everything back to her brother. The butler announces his departure and quickly scurries away from the tense situation. A menacing vision of Beatrice looms over the terrified butler as she asks where he thinks he's going. Beatrice erupts, furiously accusing him of losing her things and demanding he bring them back immediately, even if he has to steal or pay for them himself. Crying out that he understands, the butler scurries away in a panic, leaving a triumphant Beatrice behind. Beatrice reflects that, rather than just buying a new gift, she needs to heal her brother's heart from the nanny's alienation. She wonders how to approach her brother naturally when her necklace suddenly begins to glow. Clutching the glowing necklace, Beatrice gasps as an idea strikes her. With David staying at the mansion, Beatrice decides to talk to him, recalling that he's currently at the training grounds. Peeking from behind a pillar, Beatrice finds her brother at the training grounds, noting that he is practicing with a sword. She watches him practice, surprised by his interest in swordsmanship. Impressed by his skill, she wonders why she never knew he was so capable and decides to leave him be for now. Just as she turns to leave, David calls out, "Who is there?" causing her to jump in surprise. A flustered David turns around, blushing as he recognizes his sister Lice and asks why she's there. Startled by her presence, David drops his sword, and Beatrice rushes forward, realizing the blade is about to fall. David yells, "No!" in terror as he sees his sister running toward the falling weapon. In a flash, David shields Beatrice with his own body as they tumble to the grass, the sword lying harmlessly beside them. David scolds her, warning she can't catch a sword with her bare hands, and a remorseful Beatrice apologizes. He quickly softens, telling her not to be sorry and admitting he was just scared she would get hurt. David stands to leave, telling her not to come to a dangerous place like this alone again. Still on the ground, Beatrice reaches out, pleading for her brother to wait a minute. David pauses, asking if she has something to say. Beatrice holds up her necklace, explaining she wanted to show it to him to prove she hadn't forgotten him. Her hope fades as she trails off, figuring he's already disappointed in her and apologizing for the interruption. David dismisses her apology, claiming his swordsmanship is insignificant and his practice was meaningless anyway. Beatrice insists his skills look amazing, then internally realizes something is wrong. Wondering why he's so insecure, David continues to put himself down, lamenting that his abilities do nothing for the family. He recalls their father's cruel words, saying David was worthless compared to her, causing Beatrice to stare in shock. Beatrice grabs her brother's arm, insisting everything he just said is a lie. As David stares in confusion, Beatrice clarifies that their father actually said David is the best, because he's a Cumble successor. David is stunned into disbelief, whispering, "Father?" "No way." "Really?" Beatrice insists, her conviction shining as brightly as her necklace. Beatrice gestures toward her necklace, beginning to explain her true feelings. With a tear in her eye, she earnestly asks if he can now see her sincerity. David looks at her, a faint blush on his cheeks, admitting he thought she had thrown his gift away but sees she kept it. Beatrice beams, exclaiming that of course she kept it. How could she ever throw away a gift from her older brother? David offers a rare, gentle smile and thanks her, calling her by her nickname, Lice. Beatrice is shocked to see him smile, realizing she had mistaken his expressionless face for unfriendliness. Overcome with emotion, David turns away, covering his blushing face in a moment of charming embarrassment. Beatrice pauses, wondering why her father would deliberately undermine her brother's self-esteem. Determined, she vows to restore her brother's confidence before he gets hurt even more. She runs towards David, calling out his name. With a bright smile, she asks her brother how he could possibly look so insecure. While Beatrice passionately grabs his hands, declaring with certainty that he'll be the best knight ever. Vowing to make him a confident older brother, Beatrice's resolve hardens. Now in a green dress, Beatrice decides she must go out today, despite telling Kitty she would stay in. A narration declares that side effects have appeared as a blushing David sprouts adorable puppy ears and a wagging tail. Beatrice thinks it's good her brother is more confident, but his new determined energy is too much. She decides she is too busy to sneak out with him today. Suddenly, she turns in shock to see a small boy with white hair and glasses standing there. The boy, addressing her as Lice, asks if he is bothering her, but she dismisses his concern, stating she has something important to do. Beatrice stops mid-step, a new plan suddenly clicking into place. She approaches the still flustered puppy-eared David. David looks away, bashfully admitting that her suggestion is a bit much. With sparkling, hopeful eyes, Beatrice clasps her hands and looks up at him pleadingly. David covers his face, completely charmed and sparkling with affection. A tearful Kitty frantically warns Beatrice that it's dangerous to go out alone and insists she take escort nights. David steps in front of Beatrice, firmly declaring that she is going with him and they won't need any knights. Beatrice smiles slyly, pointing out that since her 15-year-old brother is old enough, Kitty can't object to them going out together. A new journey begins under a bright, cloud-filled sky. Arriving in a rustic, unkempt village, David asks Beatrice if this is really where she wanted to go, and she quietly confirms it is. A determined smile spreads across Beatrice's face as she thinks they're about to make a big deal here. David and Beatrice walk together down a muddy, unpaved street. A hooded man with a face covering confronts them, questioning how children got into this restricted area. David glares protectively, while Beatrice calmly steps forward, identifying the man as a guild guide and demanding he take her to the chief. The guide holds out his hand for payment, questioning if just anyone can meet the chief. Beatrice beams, realizing she was right that money would grant them an audience. A flashback narration explains that there was once a time when black wizards flourished throughout the empire. The narrator continues, revealing that investigations uncovered information guilds, and one in particular was found to be aiding the Black Wizards. The camera focuses on several ancient scrolls. A decorative frame reveals the name of the notorious information guild, Ion. As they follow the guide, Beatrice reflects on the irony of seeking help from Ion, an organization she once considered an axis of evil. The guide opens an ornate door, announcing their arrival and inviting them inside. Peeking through the doorway, Beatrice steels herself, finally about to meet the infamous Ivan Terpe and wondering what he's like. Entering a lavishly decorated room, Beatrice and David stare in awe, completely taken aback by what they see. The room is filled with holy relics, making Beatrice wonder why a devotee would help black wizards. A man sitting behind a grand desk calmly welcomes them. The man, identified as Ivan Terpe, head of the information guild Ion, smirks and asks if his customer missed him. Beatrice notes his handsome appearance as Ivan feigns concern, saying he doesn't want to corrupt a lost lamb. She internally scoffs, thinking his entire existence would anger God. Beatrice coolly retorts that his existence is already offensive to God and warns him not to trifle with the Cumble family. She notes with surprise that he already knows who they are, even though she hasn't officially made her debut. Beatrice concludes that Ion's information network is as essential as she expected. Ivan, in turn, asks if she knows the truth. Ivan holds up a silver cross, asking if she's referring to the ancient oracle concerning the appearance of the Saintess. Her eyes glowing with an intense blue light, Beatrice confirms she means the Saintess from the oracle. With her hair now tinged pink and surrounded by flowers, Beatrice declares that she is the Saintess, offering him a chance to serve God. David's eyes widen, glowing with power as he lets out a breath of disbelief. Ivan throws his head back and erupts into hearty laughter. He clutches a cross to his chest, pleading for her not to insult his faith and insisting on his sincerity to God. Beatrice thinks that while he may be a true believer, she knows the real reason Ion was untouchable. The high priest wanted to monopolize the guild's massive donations. She realizes the donations were not a sign of faith, but a contingency plan for the unexpected. Surrounded by white lilies, Beatrice declares she doesn't mean to insult his faith, but rather to reveal her true identity. Ivan remains skeptical, coolly asking how he's supposed to believe her claim. An ornate frame illustrates the oracle's prophecy. A special flower will bloom and choose the one true Saintess. With a determined David behind her, Beatrice declares she's making a gamble and stakes her life on her claim being true. Ivan recalls Gamel Garoon, a legendary war hero and the most famous force in the Empire, thinking no one could surpass him. He shudders with a blush, admitting that even the thought of bothering such a powerful man's daughter gives him chills. His expression hardens as he warns her that when it comes to assassination, the rules are different. Ivan looms over Beatrice, speaking of aiming for the happiest moment of her life. Surrounded by floating black feathers, Ivan explains Ion's assassinations always succeed because they strike when a target is most at ease, then questions how she can speak so casually of her own life. Beatrice smiles brightly, confidently stating that nothing he says will change the fact that she is the Saintess. Ivan playfully tugs on the ribbon of Beatrice's bonnet, while an enraged David clenches his fists at his side. As they leave the guild, Beatrice and David stand in the alley while their guide watches from a doorway. David confronts his sister, angrily asking what she meant by declaring herself a Saintess and betting her own life. Beatrice calmly explains she wasn't hiding it from him because she trusts him completely, which seems to placate David. She turns away, admitting there's nothing more she can tell him at the moment. A troubled David presses his hand to his forehead, asking what she plans to do. Beatrice turns back to him with sparkling, determined eyes. Beatrice pulls a shocked David close, whispering that this is all for Daora Bunny, causing him to flinch in pained surprise. Brother, glowering with concern, David grabs her shoulders and demands to know what's gotten into her. A new voice asks if Triss recognizes a man as a high-ranking noble, causing her eyes to widen in surprise. Elsewhere, two hooded figures walk through a village as a bearded man wonders if that is Marquise Hortense and what he's doing there. David quickly pulls Beatrice away from view, thinking they shouldn't be seen and asking if she's all right. Peeking from the corner, Beatrice glances at Marquise Hortense, concluding no legal business would bring him to a place like this. Pondering the situation, Beatrice decides she'll have Ivan investigate the Marquis. A flashback reveals a demonic figure, the head of the Ion Guild, who promised someone he would find Lena before the Oracle flower bloomed. Beatrice thinks of Ivan, recalling his promise to bring her news, and wondering if he can truly sneak into her father's estate. Grown, Beatrice feels overwhelmed, realizing Ivan didn't ask for payment because he's holding her life as collateral. Wag, wag. David, complete with puppy ears and a tail, eagerly says that since her business is done, they can spend the day together. The scene shifts to a flashback at a grand villa, a forbidden place where the crown prince recuperated. A woman in red named Triss regrets coming to keep him company, and as a baby cries, she apologizes to David. Shut! A maid closes the door, informing Triss that His Highness will arrive shortly, to which she calmly agrees. Triss asks her maid how long she has served Prince Kale, and the maid confirms it has been a long time. Raise. The maid tells Triss the prince seems smitten with her, having called for her immediately upon his return from the palace. Clink. Triss puts down her teacup, flatly stating that the prince isn't fond of her and that her father is forcing them together. The maid continues, explaining that Triss's father sees her as the future crown princess. Sigh. Triss acknowledges that all the nobles think so, but she laments that it's entirely her father's doing. Glance. The maid cautiously asks Triss if she feels uncomfortable being there. Triss looks away, denying that she is uncomfortable. With firm resolve, Triss declares she doesn't want to become the crown princess or live as her father's puppet. She reflects that she and Kyle are childhood friends and she can't just abandon him. Triss suddenly stands, telling her startled maid she must ask something of Kyre, His Highness. The maid looks confused, asking, Triss? As Triss stares ahead blankly. Beam. A young, silver-haired boy with purple eyes appears, cheerfully exclaiming that it's been a long time. Gasp! Triss stares in utter shock, wondering if this is really Kale, and marveling at how adorable he was as a child. Cough. Cough. As Triss begins to speak, the young boy Kale is overcome by a violent coughing fit. Triss immediately rushes to the ailing Prince Kale's side, full of concern. Triss supports the weak prince, asking if he is all right and suggesting he rest in his room. Cough, cough. Triss recalls that Prince Kale's health has been poor since childhood, forcing him to recuperate away from the palace, and admits she was never very concerned before. Standing close, she holds his hands and thinks to herself, "But, sparkle, sparkle!" Gasp! Prince Kyle looks at her earnestly, admitting he wanted to see her sooner, and causing Triss to gasp in surprise. Triss stares in shock, thinking this young Prince Kyle is completely different from the one she remembers. Gazing at his cute, innocent face, Triss resolves to raise Kale to be a good and upright child. With hardened determination, Triss vows that she won't let Kale suffer the same fate he did before. Chatter. In a lavish room, Triss gently tells Kale that he mustn't forget the people who cherish him. Looking baffled, the young Prince Kale quietly agrees that he will be sure to remember her words. Triss reflects on how obedient young Kale is while he looks at her with a questioning gaze. Looking towards a warm fireplace, Triss advises Kale not to take the Duke's words to heart, leaving Kale confused. Triss clarifies her statement, telling Kale not to take her father's insistence on their marriage seriously. Prince Kale looks completely stunned by her unexpected words. Blushing and flustered, Kale asks her why she would suddenly say such a thing. With tears in his eyes, he asks if she doesn't like him anymore. But Triss quickly exclaims that's not it at all. She holds his hands reassuringly, explaining that no one should ever be forced into marriage by someone else. Sulk. Triss asks Kale if he doesn't want to marry someone he genuinely cares for, and he looks down, sulking. Whimper. As Kale remains silent, a puzzled Triss wonders what he's thinking, musing that children's hearts are a mystery. Triss reminds him that even in the past, she wasn't the one he was supposed to marry. She recalls that Lena was his intended bride and suddenly wonders if Lena was the true saint all along. Triss's expression hardens as she decides it doesn't matter, vowing she has no intention of letting Lena become the Saintess. A vision of a young, innocent Kale with bunny ears appears, sitting quietly. Triss leans in and reassures Kale not to worry, promising that her advice will help him marry the one he loves. Grin. She smiles confidently, declaring that she will guide him every step of the way. Haha. The two children laugh together, breaking the tension in the ornate room. Over a tray of tea, Prince Kale observes that Triss seems different somehow. Surrounded by flowers, Triss silently reflects on his observation. She internally confirms that it's true. She is a different person than she was in the past. Grab, wince. As she starts to explain, Kale suddenly grabs her hand and winces in pain. Tremble. A concerned Triss asks if he's all right as he trembles, clutching his chest. Slip. His sleeve slips down his arm, revealing dark, ugly bruises. Lurch. Triss recoils in shock, staring at the strange marks on his skin. Gasp. Horrified, she asks Kale what on earth those marks are. Recoil. Kale pulls back nervously, trying to find the words to explain. Looking away with a sad expression, he tells her that he can't say what the bruises are from. With a tear in his eye, Kale adds that he would be angry if he saw the marks. Triss calls his name as he pleads with her to keep this a secret. She reflects on her mistaken belief that Kyle lived a charmed life, now realizing the truth behind his bruises. Realizing she had no idea about his suffering, she calls out to him, and he responds timidly. Shout. Triss passionately declares that she is completely different from how she was before. She explains she changed to protect those she holds dear and vows to help him too. Fidget. Kale nervously fidgets with his clothes, murmuring that he's too frail. Triss leans over and gently pats his head in a comforting gesture. With hopeful eyes, Kale asks if she really means it, and Triss promises that she does. Surrounded by pink roses, Beatrice gives him a warm, reassuring smile. Extending her hand, she promises that no matter what happens, she will never abandon him. A blushing Kale looks up at her, deeply moved by her heartfelt vow. His hand reaches out, ready to accept her offered hand. A close-up focuses on the intricate purple brooch on Kale's collar. A terrifying vision shows a small, cowering Kyle threatened by a large shadow as his inner thoughts reveal his fear of footsteps. The title card appears for the Saint Reborn as the villain, marking the end of Chapter 12. In the present, a maid brushes Beatrice's hair as she thinks about how Kale would never reveal who bruised him. Blushing slightly, she feels a pang of hurt, realizing he still doesn't completely trust her. The maid informs a surprised Beatrice that his Grace's guests will be arriving today. Beatrice grimaces as the maid announces the arrival of the heads of houses Aelios and Hortense, along with their heirs. Dreading the meeting, Beatrice thinks this will be awful, while her maid looks on in confusion. A purple-haired girl named Shaya is greeted warmly, being told she looks beautiful as ever. Beatrice politely offers her thanks as a red-haired man with a patch on his cheek informs her that his Grace is waiting. Beatrice's father instructs the visiting girl's father to ensure Lady Beatrice is entertained, to which the purple-haired Shaya agrees. Loom, a woman with two-toned hair named Kitty, slyly presents Beatrice with a gift, a beautifully decorated cake. Gasp! Beatrice recoils in horror, instantly recognizing the dessert as a chantran. The maid and the two visiting girls, Shaya and Cornelia, admire the delicious-looking cake, unaware of its dangerous nature. Tremble. Beatrice recalls a past event, thinking that Cornelia, the blue-gray-haired girl, was also present that day. Trembling with anger, Beatrice clenches her fist, furious at Kitty's public display of false consideration. As Shaya and Cornelia chat idly, Beatrice internally fumes. Recognizing Kitty's gift is nothing but a cruel ploy. Beatrice feels trapped, realizing Kitty knows she can't refuse the gift in front of her father without being criticized. With a cunning smile, Beatrice decides to reciprocate Kitty's kindness and asks her maid to bring a special tea. Beatrice presents the tea, explaining its unique aroma comes from a reliable trader as Shaya watches. Beatrice graciously invites Shaya and Cornelia to try the special tea she has prepared for them. Ha! The purple-haired Shaya laughs, seemingly amused by the offer, as she prepares to take a sip. Clink. As Shaya sets her cup down, Beatrice internally notes that Cornelia won't drink, suspecting her conscience is bothering her. HMPH. Shaya turns away with a pout, while Cornelia looks on with an anxious expression. Sulk. Shaya confronts Beatrice, questioning if the tea she's been served is actually trustworthy. Spring! Slam! Shaya leaps to her feet, declaring the tea's trademark and color are strange. Bletch reeling back from the foul reek, Shaya gags, exclaiming that the tea stinks of something rotten. Outraged, Shaya loudly declares that she refuses to let the foul-smelling tea touch her lips. Beatrice feigns hurt at the harsh words, pointedly asking a shocked Cornelia, "Lady Shaya." Done. Beatrice reveals the tea is a special import from House Aelios, procured by her father from the east. Beatrice lands her final blow, revealing her father named the blend Shaya tea, leaving Shaya utterly mortified. Deeply insulted, Shaya storms out of the room as Beatrice calls for her to wait. Now alone with the stunned Cornelia, Beatrice calmly asks why she refused to drink the Shaya tea. Whirl. A furious and cornered Cornelia spins around to face Beatrice's accusation. Smirk. Beatrice smugly sips her tea, guessing that Cornelia felt too guilty to drink it because of her past actions. Panicked, Cornelia denies the accusation, asking why Beatrice is twisting her good intentions. Smirk. With a chilling smile, Beatrice asks if Cornelia knows why she can't eat chantran, ominously suggesting they find out. Beatrice proposes that since Cornelia brought the cake, they should at least have a taste. A horrified Cornelia can only ask, "Pardon?" as she watches Beatrice from across the room. Beatrice coldly details the lethal chantran allergy, noting the estate physician is conveniently on leave today. She finishes her threat, stating that while the allergy could be fatal, that's of no concern to someone like Cornelia. Clink. As Beatrice lifts a piece of cake to her own mouth, Cornelia begs her to stop. Beatrice smiles serenely as she takes a bite of the cake, leaving Cornelia in suspense. Elsewhere, Beatrice's father, the Duke, sits with his red-haired aide, Gaston, and other noblemen. The Duke turns to his aide, calling him Gaston, to ask a serious question. The Duke asks Gaston if he knew that Beatrice was being tormented by her nanny. Ashamed, Gaston admits to his Grace that he had no idea of Beatrice's suffering. Flinch. When asked if he feels remorse, Gaston flinches before trying to explain himself. The Duke muses aloud that it would be odd not to feel affection for such an endearing daughter. Sparkle. Gaston advises the Duke to treat Beatrice well with gifts, to which the Duke insists he already does. Glum. The Duke glumly admits Beatrice doesn't seem to care for his gifts, much to Gaston's surprise. Beatrice internally scoffs at her father's childish taste, knowing she despised the flamboyant dresses he chose. Thoughtfully, The Duke declares that he knows what Lady Beatrice would truly like. Gaston leans in and whispers a suggestion into the Duke's ear about what his daughter would prefer. The Duke glances away, intrigued, and asks if what Gaston suggested is true. Gaston bows respectfully, stating it is an honor to serve a lady with such a beautiful heart, pleasing the Duke. The Duke looks down, surprised, as he asks if Beatrice really said that. Gaston reminds the Duke that the anniversary of Isaac's death is approaching. Surrounded by ethereal roses, the Duke wonders how much he truly knows about his own child. First, an aide's panicked voice shouts that something terrible has happened. The brown-haired aide rushes forward with a look of sheer panic. Bang! The doors to the room are violently thrown open. The Duke and Gaston arrive to see Beatrice with her eyes closed, having seemingly eaten the cake. Clatter! A spoon drops to the table, as her father's furious voice demands to know what she is doing. Blink. Beatrice opens her eyes with an innocent expression, a piece of cake before her. Her father glares at her, his face contorted in anger and disbelief. Gasp. Beatrice looks up in feigned shock and calls out to her father. Grab. The Duke seizes her arm, furiously asking if she has a death wish. Slump. As the man dashes forward, Cornelia swoons and collapses with a weak groan. Clasp. Cornelia's father catches her, demanding to know what happened, and accusing Beatrice of startling his weak-hearted daughter. Rise. Sigh. Beatrice stands, thinking this is all getting tedious and deciding to apologize now that her father is present. Bow. Beatrice bows her head, admitting that she played a questionable prank on Cornelia. Surrounded by roses, she formally apologizes for having startled Cornelia. Outraged, Cornelia's father yells that it was no mere prank, claiming his daughter nearly died. Twitch. Block. The Duke steps in front of Beatrice, declaring that since she called it a prank, they will treat it as a squabble between children. Cornelia's father asks if the Duke will simply let it pass, but the Duke menacingly asks what will happen if he doesn't. The Duke coldly questions how Marquise Hortense can explain his daughter giving Beatrice a chantilly-laced cake, knowing her past near-death experience. Glower. The Duke's expression darkens as he internally wonders if Cornelia was genuinely trying to kill Beatrice. Tremble. Struck by the accusation, Marquise Hortense and Cornelia tremble in fear. Loom. Foosh. The Duke's imposing anger makes him stumble, but Gaston catches him, urging him to compose himself. Shout. Furious, Marquise Hortense grabs his daughter and orders her to stand up at once. Press. Bow. He forces Cornelia into a deep bow, offering a rushed apology before bidding them good day. Slam. As the door slams shut, Marquise Hortense is heard scolding his foolish child for causing trouble. The Duke asks Beatrice what happened, and if the cake truly contained chantran, but she looks away, trailing off. Gasp. The Duke realizes Hortense's daughter was tormenting Beatrice. Gnash. He grits his teeth, furious that their claims of friendship were lies. The Duke angrily orders Gaston to inform Marquise Hortense he wants nothing to do with him or his supposed mysterious powers. Pat. He gently pats Beatrice's head, reassuring her that she should come to him if anything like this ever happens again. Seethe. Walking away, the Duke fumes about the poisonous viper, vowing to pull out all his fangs. Beatrice reflects that she normally would have been severely punished for causing such an uproar. Whoosh! The scene transitions as a blue curtain billows in the wind. Clack. The window is shut as Beatrice, now in a winter cloak, notes the strong wind. Snow falls on the grand estate, signaling that winter has come. Beatrice reflects that she has been avoiding her father for half a year, even as he seems to seek her out, peeking at him from a doorway. She muses that he never asks for her directly, as she watches him and Gaston walk in the snow. Duck! Startled, Beatrice quickly ducks out of sight, worried their eyes met. Beatrice wonders if her father's expectations have changed now that she's clever, but she resolves that her mind is already made up. Peek. Still watching from the doorway, she vows to protect the family her father holds so dear. Clip. Clop. As a carriage passes by the window, she concludes that this path is the safest for her as well. Beatrice closes her eyes against the breeze, noting that the wind has grown quite chill. Step. Gasp. She turns in surprise as a man with gray hair steps into the room. The gray-haired man smiles faintly, remarking that winter has come. He impatiently asks if she has finally found Lena. Beatrice calmly states she has not, and the man angrily questions her failure as the head of an information guild while she apologizes. He coolly asks if she is certain Lena even exists, prompting Beatrice to explain Lena is likely under the temple's protection. Shout! Beatrice loses her composure and angrily shouts, asking if he is accusing her of lying. The gray-haired man explains that since children with black hair and red eyes are rare, they search the entire temple for Lena. He concludes their search, stating that they were unable to find a single girl matching that description. Beatrice wonders to herself if Lena is using an alias, has a family, or was even born in the Empire. Flinch. The gray-haired man presses the future Lady Saint, asking why she's so certain this child exists when so much about her is a mystery. Beatrice curtly replies that it's none of his concern, but he laughs, reassuring her that he is on her side. Beam. Beatrice skeptically reminds him he vowed to kill her if the Oracle chose someone else, and he smiles, amused that she remembers. Holding a lollipop, he expresses his hope that he won't have to take her life with his own hands. Clear. The scene transitions to a bright, clear sky over snow-covered branches. A brown-haired maid cheers at the beautiful sunshine, suggesting the greenhouse will be extra cozy as Beatrice looks on. The maid excitedly reports that the crown prince has asked for Beatrice again and granted her use of the imperial greenhouse, a sign of his fondness. Beatrice looks away with a slight blush, thinking to herself that her reluctance is not due to modesty. Her maid gasps in delight, announcing that His Highness has personally come out to greet Beatrice. A young, gray-haired boy stands waiting at a grand entrance alongside two men. Beam. The gray-haired boy gives a bright, beaming wave. A smiling Beatrice waves back, warmly greeting the boy as Kale. Her expression turns serious as she asks Kyle why he never replied to her letters in the past. Scritch. Scratch. A flashback shows Beatrice's hand writing a letter to Kale, telling him of Spring's arrival in Atlanta. Scritch. Scratch. The letter continues, with Beatrice expressing how much she misses him and her father, and affirming something she once told him. Her letters span the seasons, praying for his health in spring and noting the cooler weather of summer in Atlanta. As autumn arrives, she writes with concern, asking if his cough has gotten any better. In the dead of winter, her letters grow worried, questioning if something is wrong because he has not replied. After a year has passed, she pleads for him to send a reply if he is all right, as his well-being concerns her most. Back in the present, a voice exclaims over the marvelous gifts for Saint Lena, catching the now adult Beatrice by surprise. A black-haired lady is fussed over by maids amidst piles of gifts as gossip spreads that the prince must be with his new fiancée. Quiver. The black-haired lady's face contorts with rage while Beatrice looks on, shocked and concerned. Sniffle. Surrounded by her maids, the black-haired lady tearfully admits she isn't happy, much to their confusion. Beatrice watches with a pained expression as the lady thinks bitterly that the prince must have done all this for someone else before. The maids' silhouettes loom over Beatrice as they gasp in shock at the revelation. Tremble. Beatrice trembles, thinking how distressing the other's sadness is, and admitting she has never received such gifts. Beam. The black-haired lady looks at Beatrice with wide, hopeful eyes, asking if that's really true. Step. Beatrice declares that she is the first, as the black-haired lady thinks that His Highness must see Lady Lena as truly special. The black-haired lady stops Beatrice, asking if she knows the location of the Crown Prince's villa. Waver. Dash. After a moment's hesitation, Beatrice turns and quickly dashes away. Dash. She runs toward a large estate, wondering if Kale has forgotten her, and wishing he would at least lie to her. Bursting into a room, she calls out for Kale, immediately noticing a strange, pungent smoke. Cough, cough. The gray-haired man, Kale, sits in the smoky room and greets her. It's been 10 years, Triss. Cough. He gives a tired smile, remarking that he heard she had been in the capital for a while. Stunned, Triss wonders if this man is truly Kale, thinking he seems like a completely different person. Her thought continues that he is nothing like the Kale she once knew. Kale looks at her intensely, asking if she doesn't recognize him, and stating he would know her in an instant. He claims to have pictured her every day, leaving Triss to demand what he means and why he never replied to her letters. A look of sudden understanding dawns on her face. Kale holds up a card, coolly stating that he now understands what it is she wants from him. Triss recognizes the card as the message she sent to inform Kale of her visit. Sway, Kale dismisses her, offering not to press trespassing charges for old time's sake, but Triss insists she has questions. Clatter. Grabbing his arm, she demands to know why he didn't tell her about the Oracle or their broken engagement. to which he claims ignorance. Crash. Thud. He violently shoves her hand away, sending her stumbling back in shock. Tris screams Kyle's name as he suddenly collapses to the floor amidst the smoke and shattered debris. Memory reveals Kyle lying among flowers, his body said to be damaged beyond repair, as illness consumed him. A bewildered young Beatrice looks on, wondering what happened to Kale after she died in her past life. Beatrice realizes, with dawning horror, that someone has been impersonating her, sending letters to Kale in her name. Flinch. A flashback shows a young Kale flinching in surprise during a conversation with a young Beatrice. In the memory, a concerned Kale asks Beatrice if she is all right and what has her so upset. Beatrice connects the pungent incense from Kale's room to his failing health, realizing it's a suspicious new element in his life. She theorizes that the person who forged her letters might have also sent the incense, possibly being the same person who harmed Kale before. Sniffle. She resolves to be cautious and find the culprit, recalling a memory of a tearful Kale calling her name. Shout. Trying to change the subject in the flashback, Beatrice loudly asks Kale about their plans for the day. Beatrice pauses, thoughtfully considering what they should do together for the day. Wow. An excited Kale presents a book on manners he brought for them to look at together. Glance. The two children sit closely, reading the book and sharing quiet glances. Hesitant, peeking over the book, Kale's thoughts reveal he is still worried, wishing Tris would confide in him. Startled by his unspoken concern, Beatrice internally debates whether she should tell Kale the dangerous truth. Plop. Gasp. She imagines telling Kale his life is in danger and pictures him being literally scared to death. Shake, shake. Deciding against it, Beatrice frantically shakes her head, leaving a nearby Kyle utterly bewildered. She deflects by promising to tell him everything someday, once he has grown up. Spin, spin. The vague promise sends Kale's head spinning, shocked that he has to wait so long. Flip, flip. While Kale returns to flipping through the book, Beatrice sits beside him, lost in pensive thought. Kale reads a page offering romantic advice, explaining that a significant height difference is needed to be seen as a man. Done. Sniffle. The advice makes Kale tearfully insecure about his height, which confuses Beatrice. Slump. Overcome with sudden despair, Kale dramatically slumps onto the couch, surprising her. Kale bluntly asks if he isn't her type, leaving Beatrice flustered and wondering about the sudden question. Pout. He pouts, feeling inadequate, but Beatrice quickly insists that he shouldn't say that. Leaning in close, Beatrice warmly reassures him that he's a wonderful person who should have more confidence. Beam. Her words of encouragement make Kale blush, and he beams at her with affection. Cough. Cough. Kale declares he can't imagine life without her, but his words are cut short by a coughing fit that worries Beatrice. Amidst a field of flowers, Kale sweetly asks Beatrice to promise she will always stay by his side. Beatrice feels a pang of sadness, knowing the oracle flower means they must eventually part ways, and she doesn't know how to tell him. She gently tries to explain that people sometimes part ways, but a coughing Kale presses her to clarify what she means. Cough. Alarmed, Kale asks if she's implying that she intends to leave him. Choke cough. His panic triggers a violent coughing fit, and he spits up blood as a horrified Beatrice screams for a physician. Beatrice rushes from the room to find a doctor, leaving Kale collapsed and weak on the sofa. A memory surfaces of Beatrice holding a book, thinking how Kale became her entire world from the moment they met. The memory shifts to a sad, young Kale, who felt that everything in the world existed only to torment him. He recalls the cold palace, his father, and even his own frail body as sources of pain that bound him like thorns. But the memory concludes on a bright image of Beatrice smiling in a field of sunflowers, his one solace. Fade. As the bittersweet memory fades, Kale's faint voice is heard pleading for Tris not to leave him. Back in the present, Beatrice anxiously asks a maid about Prince Kale's condition. The maid remarks on how pale Beatrice looks, but Beatrice internally despairs, wondering how she could possibly be calm. Her expression hardens with worry and determination as she thinks of Kale's name. Caw, a black crow suddenly flies past the window, catching her eye. Burst flutter. The crow flies directly into the room, startling Beatrice as she questions its presence. The crow transforms into a note that Beatrice recognizes is from Ivan, and she wonders what could be happening. World-A maid rushes in and urgently grabs Beatrice's arm, calling out to her. The maid delivers an urgent command from the Duke, telling Beatrice she has been ordered to leave at once. Confused by the sudden order, Beatrice questions the maid, who only knows that she must come immediately. Clip, clop, rattle. Beatrice is rushed away in a carriage, speeding through a snowy forest at night. Inside the carriage, she frets over her father's strange summons, but decides Ivan's note is the higher priority. Clatter. She opens the note and is shocked to read the message. They have found the future Lady Saint. Screech. The carriage suddenly lurches to a halt, throwing Beatrice forward with a cry. Groan. Dazed from the impact, Beatrice lies on the floor of the carriage. Creak. Dazed from the crash, Beatrice looks up as the carriage door slowly swings open. Two bandits peer into the carriage, with the torch-wielding leader declaring they will make a fortune from this bundle. The bald man grins menacingly, confidently stating that she'll fetch a high price even in her current state. Chills. A wave of terror washes over Beatrice as she wonders if these men are bandits. The bald leader grows impatient, ordering his accomplice to hurry up and knock her out. Shove. A rough hand clamps over Beatrice's mouth, stifling her cry for help. The scene transitions to a magnificent, snow-covered ducal estate under a cold, clear sky. Mutter. Outside the temple, the Duke of Cumble curses the priests, but his red-haired aide warns him they are on holy ground during a ritual. As his aide provides a light, the Duke dismisses the summons, stating his mere presence should be enough for them. Murmur, murmur. The Duke and his aide observe a group of priests whispering amongst themselves in the distance. Whisper. The priests secretly discuss a momentous event, questioning why it is happening now after centuries of silence and worrying about being overheard. The Duke quietly explains to his aide that Beatrice's father, the Duke of Cumble, is more than just a powerful noble. Nash. He reveals the Duke is a ruthless murderer from the wars of conquest, a fact that stuns his aide. The priests secretly debate, questioning if the daughter of such a man is fit for her calling and plotting how to prevent her from ever arriving. As the priests walk away, one is silenced by his superior, told to hold his peace about their dark intentions. The Duke fumes, internally raging against the sanctimonious blackguards for their plotting. Whirl. Realizing the priests were scheming against his daughter, the Duke vows to behead them, forcing his aide to restrain him. The aide pleads with the Duke to calm down, warning that causing a commotion will draw the unwanted attention of His Majesty. Vowing to uncover their secrets, the Duke decides to bide his time for now. His aide suggests they must protect Lady Beatrice, recommending an immediate night escort back to the estate. The Duke urgently asks for Beatrice's location, and his aide confirms she is at the Crown Prince's villa. Another aide rushes in frantically, shouting that something terrible has occurred. Lady Beatrice has been abducted. Blink. Beatrice's eyes flutter open as she slowly comes to her senses in a dark, unfamiliar room. Shout. Lying bound on the floor, Beatrice wonders where she is as an angry voice outside shouts, "You never said she was the Oracle's saint." Her captors argue frantically outside the door, realizing their simple kidnapping has become far more dangerous and contemplating escape. One bandit argues they shouldn't throw away such a rare opportunity, while another questions if she is even truly the saint. Gasp. Beatrice overhears a captor confirm her identity, revealing her status as the saint is a secret that has not yet been made public. This knowledge means only one thing. The divine oracle, silent for an age, has finally been delivered. A thought surfaces, questioning if it was a mere coincidence that Lady Lena appeared at the exact same time the oracle was received. Beatrice recalls her father's summons, clinging to the hope that he will surely send knights to find her when she fails to arrive. Flinch. Her hope is shattered by a bandit's terrified shriek that they are all doomed anyway. The bandit's argument continues, with one suggesting they hold her for ransom while the other tells him to simply guard her. Chills. Her blood runs cold as another voice cuts through the argument with a simple, terrifying suggestion. Just kill her. Creak. As the door begins to open, Beatrice processes the horrifying thought that they plan to murder her. Tromp. Heavy footsteps enter the room, and Beatrice realizes with dawning terror that her captors never intended to ask for a ransom. Pause. A man kneels beside her, and she accepts the horrifying possibility that she is about to be killed. Suddenly, her orange-haired kidnapper clutches his head, overcome with sheer panic and terror. He collapses in despair, lamenting how he got mixed up in kidnapping the Lady Saint and regretting his decision. Beatrice watches in confusion, wondering if her kidnapper is a believer having a crisis of conscience. The distraught man remains frozen, trapped in his own fear and regret over his actions. Crash! He stumbles backward over a chair, and despite her fear, Beatrice instinctively asks if he is hurt. Now sitting up, Beatrice regards her captor with a look of pure, gentle empathy. Reach. Snapping back to reality, the man realizes she is awake and resolves to kill her, his hand moving toward his sword. Beatrice speaks calmly, reassuring him that he's done nothing wrong and must be frightened. He stares, stunned, as she tells him he isn't a bad person by nature, but is actually gentle and good. In his eyes, she transforms into an angelic figure, telling him with divine calm not to be troubled. However, a darker thought asserts itself in her mind. While mercy is one thing, those who have sinned still deserve punishment. Smiling kindly, Beatrice tells the conflicted man that deep down, he already knows the right answer. Completely broken, the kidnapper lays his head in her lap and weeps as she comforts him, murmuring, "Oh my, you poor dear." Beatrice offers the man divine forgiveness, telling him not to fear because God is merciful and will pardon his transgressions. Her captor is completely stunned by her words, stammering as he asks what she means. Reach. Overcome with piety, the man declares he will untie her bonds. Nod. Beatrice thanks the now faithful one as he weeps, surrounded by an imagined angelic choir. In a vision, a younger, colder Beatrice tells the man that if he heeds her words, he will gain salvation. Crunch! A pair of ornate shoes steps into the snow near a fallen figure. The Duke's red-haired aide surveys a scene of defeated bandits, but is shocked to find a crouched Kale, who whispers Beatrice's name in distress. Kale glares with cold fury, his mind racing as he recognizes that the attacker's methods are intimately familiar to House Cumble's knights. Step. Elsewhere, a bandit named Derek carries a large sack, confirming to his bald accomplice that the job is done. Done. The reality of his actions hits Derek as he thinks, with horror, "I killed her with my own hands." Derek tells his accomplices he'll carry the body as agreed, and after a moment's hesitation, they allow it. Icy. The bald man eyes Derek with deep suspicion, asking if he's hiding something, but Derek plays dumb. Shout! The bald man angrily accuses Derek of hiding things, but his other accomplice tells him to drop it. Shout! Derek furiously retorts, asking how they can expect him to trust them, leading the others to dismissively tell him to suit himself. The blue-scarfed bandit confirms with Derek that they're delivering the sentry to Elric, adding that the client went straight to the boss. Derek is shocked by this news, thinking it's impossible, since their boss is famously obsessed with secrecy. Toss. His accomplice laughs it off as Derek throws the sack into a wagon, and they prepare to leave. Spin. The blue-scarfed man turns and orders everyone to get moving. Rattle. Groan. Inside the moving wagon, Beatrice is violently tossed around inside the sack she's hiding in. It's revealed that Beatrice posing as a corpse was her idea, part of a plan she concocted with the bandit, Derek. Beatrice recalls the details of the criminal operation. Kidnappers bypass inspections by handing victims to allied sentries, who then deliver them to slavers. She curses the filthy scoundrels, thinking how she and Derek decided to turn the tables on their usual method. The plan relies on Derek's established relationship with the sentry on duty. Russell. Derek is meant to slip a note to his allied sentry, asking for help with the secret escape. Beatrice remembers Derek's first warning. She must not be seen by any other guards during the wall inspection. And his second, more critical warning, the other bandits must not find out that she is actually alive. With a hidden dagger as a last resort, Beatrice loses hope in her father's rescue, realizing she must save herself. Rattle, clatter. As the wagon jolts along, she steels her resolve to find her own way out. The scene shifts to an interrogation room where a dark-haired commander stands over a beaten man in a red robe. The captive, Alan Dariff, the head of a slave syndicate, claims he doesn't know the kidnapper's exact route. Icy. Commander Joy Majoff of the Cumble Knights grabs him, enraged that the syndicate head knows nothing about the job he took. Majoff coldly threatens to pull out the rest of the man's teeth, making him shriek in terror. Crunch. The commander tortures the slaver, reminding him that his grace's mercy has run out now that they've kidnapped a lady of House Cumble. Moan. The slaver pleads ignorance about her identity, prompting the commander to demand who told him she was the Lady Saint. A female knight suggests a search party, but the commander says his grace is handling it personally. Their only job is finding the client. Clang. An aide reports that the person she was interrogating saw something important. The witness reveals the hirers wore black robes and blue cloaks, leading the commander and his aide to instantly suspect the temple. Chills. Commander Majoff recalls the most damning clue. The temple's agents ordered the girl killed after confirming her identity. He learns of their chilling pledge to kill every girl in the capital with blonde hair and blue eyes. Rattle, clatter, back in the wagon. Beatrice wonders if they're close to the city wall, just as the sack is suddenly opened. Spring. Derek appears, quietly explaining that he can check on her now without arousing suspicion. With a sigh of relief, Beatrice listens as Derek slyly asks if she'll still reward him when she's safe. Smiling warmly, Beatrice promises that both she and her father will remember his kindness forever. Wow. Derek's eyes widen with glee as she details his reward: farmland, 5 horses, and 100 gold coins. Rattle. Beatrice urges him to see their plan through, and he eagerly agrees. Screech. Flinch. The wagon suddenly lurches to a halt, startling them both. Derek panics, announcing a surprise checkpoint and urging Beatrice to hide. Pull. Thud. He quickly covers her, whispering that she must not be discovered, and she lies still in agreement. Slump. Knowing discovery would ruin everything, Beatrice drinks a precautionary elixir and collapses, feigning death. Clamor. Outside, an argument erupts as guards insist on inspecting the cargo, and a hand moves to open her hiding place. Rustle. A guard pulls back the cover on the cargo, revealing Beatrice lying still as Derek looks on nervously. Done. The Duke stands grimly at the checkpoint, his face a mask of cold resolve. In a flashback, the Duke recalls a younger, fragile Beatrice, vowing that he had to guard her perfectly. He remembers watching her at a ball, thinking that even if she longed for freedom, protecting her was his highest priority. The Duke believed making her an exalted, untouchable figure was the only way to ensure her safety, even if it wasn't the life she desired. He clenches his fist in anguish, lamenting her death, especially in a world where he might not have been there for her. Thud. The Duke collapses to his knees as his red-haired aide, Gaston, rushes to his side, asking if he's all right. Looking into the wagon, the Duke sees his daughter's seemingly lifeless body and asks in disbelief why she is there. Whirl. The guard who opened the wagon gasps in shock, realizing who she is and apologizing profusely to your ladyship. Done. The guard's eyes widen in terror as he checks Beatrice's pulse and realizes she's alive. He shouts that she needs a physician immediately, and slump, the Duke collapses from the overwhelming shock and relief. Derek confronts the guard, questioning his interference, while telling Gaston that his grace must be kept cool. The Duke glares at Derek with pure fury as Gaston urges him to remain calm so they can find the true culprits. Wham! The Duke shoves his aide aside, lunging forward with a vow to crush every bone in the kidnappers' bodies. His eyes burn with incandescent rage. Grab. Wham! Gaston desperately restrains the Duke, pleading with him to get a hold of himself. Thwack. The commotion awakens Beatrice, who stirs, wondering about the noise and if she hears her father's voice before her eyes blink open. Arr! Beatrice sits up to see her father struggling against Gaston, shouting, "Keep away," at the terrified bandits on the ground. From a balcony, Beatrice watches the scene unfold, wondering why her father is so furious. Swing! The Duke furiously punches the orange-haired bandit, Derek. Gasp! Beatrice cries out for her father as he grabs a stunned Gaston, shouting her name before she dashes toward him. Lift! The Duke turns just in time to catch Beatrice, lifting her safely into his arms. He stares down at her, his face a portrait of utter disbelief and shock. Beatrice looks up at her stunned father and simply asks, "What?" Clasp. Beatrice reaches up and hugs her father tightly. Father and daughter embrace in a tender, emotional reunion. Shout. Derek explains to the Duke's men that Beatrice only drank a potion to make it look like she was dead. In her father's arms, Beatrice says she ought to explain and apologizes for startling him. The Duke gently holds his daughter, who has fallen asleep in his arms, surrounded by a peaceful aura of yellow flowers. Step. As the Duke carries Beatrice away, Derek is left behind, watching them go. Panicked, Derek stammers, reminding everyone that he was promised a reward and praise for his help. The Duke, holding his daughter, gives Derek a cold, dismissive look over his shoulder. Glare. The Duke coldly states that he doesn't know the man, leaving Derek stunned. Whirl. As the Duke walks away, a desperate Derek shouts, "El Lady Saint!" after him. Sob. Sob. Elsewhere, a brown-haired maid named Kitty weeps with joy, relieved that her lady is safe. Now in bed, Beatrice comforts a crying Kitty, acknowledging that she was the first to report the kidnapping. Beatrice reflects on the situation, realizing no one had told her she was the oracle's saint. Her pink-haired maid explains the oracle must have appeared while she was at the villa, which is why the Duke sent for her. The maid gasps, revealing a shocking truth. The people who orchestrated the kidnapping were from the temple. Beatrice listens, thinking that no one at the estate had mentioned this crucial detail to her. She recalls the events, realizing with grim certainty that she figured it out herself. The temple ordered her kidnapping. Crunch! Squelch! Ard! Back in the interrogation room, Commander Majoff tortures the slaver as the Duke watches with cold fury. The Duke declares that as long as his daughter, whom he calls Triss, is in danger, he will not send her to the temple. Majoff questions defying the temple, but the Duke cryptically insists there is always a way. An aide presents a list of blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls, causing Majoff to cry out in shock at the Duke's implication. The commander realizes with horror that the Duke is considering sending a substitute in Beatrice's place. Majoff asks if he intends to imprison Beatrice in the estate for life, but the Duke stares back with unyielding determination. Pushed to his limit, the Duke retorts, asking if Majoff would rather he declare war on the temple. A sad-eyed girl with blonde hair and a blue sash stands alone, presumably the intended substitute. Fresh Beatrice suddenly bursts into the room, shocking her father and Majoff, who cry out her name in disbelief. Beatrice confronts her father, asking if he truly intends to keep her from the temple, and he replies that he has devised a sure method. An image shows the sweet, innocent face of the young, blonde-haired girl, intended to be sent as Beatrice's substitute. With a forceful grab, a red-haired man restrains an enraged blonde man, pleading for him to calm down as a loud wham echoes. A young blonde girl is roused from sleep by a thwack, thinking it's loud as she hears a voice call out to my Beatrice, wondering if it's her father before her eyes blink open to someone yelling for Duke Cumble. From the blonde girl's perspective, the blonde man thrashes against the red-haired man's hold, yelling, "Keep away!" as two other men lie defeated in the snow. Watching from a balcony, the blonde girl is shocked, wondering why her father is so angry as he glares with pure rage. With a powerful swing, the blonde man strikes an orange-haired man across the face. The blonde girl screams for her father as he accidentally strikes the red-haired man while yelling Beatrice's name in surprise. With a gasp, she dashes towards him. He gently lifts the little blonde girl into his arms amidst the falling snow. The blonde man stares in utter shock and disbelief, his eyes wide with emotion. Looking up at him from his arms, the blonde girl simply asks, "What?" She throws her arms around his neck, clasping him in a tight hug. The father and daughter share a heartfelt embrace, surrounded by a magical bloom of pink roses. The orange-haired man shouts from the snowy ground, explaining that she only drank something that made her appear dead. Beatrice nestles against her father, apologizing for startling him and saying she ought to explain. Cradling his sleeping daughter, the blonde man looks down at her peacefully amidst a field of yellow flowers. The blonde man turns and walks away with his daughter, leaving the orange-haired man behind in the snow. Panicked, the orange-haired man scrambles, shouting that he was promised a reward and praise for his actions. The blonde man pauses, holding his daughter and casting a cold, dismissive glance over his shoulder. With a menacing glare, the blonde man coldly states that he doesn't know the man. The orange-haired man freezes in shock, crying out, "Lady Saint!" as he's apprehended, his world turning blue with despair. A brown-haired maid named Kitty sobs with overwhelming relief, thankful that her lady is safe. Now tucked in bed, the blonde girl Beatrice reassures Kitty, thanking her for reporting the kidnapping, while Kitty insists Beatrice must have been terrified. Beatrice lies in bed, quietly realizing that no one had ever told her she was the oracle's saint. A pink-haired maid explains that the oracle must have appeared while Beatrice was at the villa, which is how his grace learned of her identity and sent for her. The maid gasps, covering her mouth as she reveals a shocking truth. The kidnapping was orchestrated by the temple. Beatrice thinks back, confirming that no one at the estate had informed her of this. She reveals she had already figured it out on her own. The people who ordered her kidnapping were from the temple. As a man is brutally interrogated with a sickening crunch and squelch, the blonde man watches impassively from a chair, with his red-haired aide beside him. The blonde man, now identified as the Duke, resolves that he cannot send Triss to the temple while her life is in danger. His red-haired aide worries about defying the temple's command, but the Duke calmly insists there is always a way. An aide presents the Duke with a list of blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls, causing the red-haired aide to cry out in shock. The red-haired aide realizes the Duke's plan, horrified as he asks if he's actually considering sending a substitute. He presses further, asking if the Duke intends to imprison Beatrice for her entire life, earning a cold, determined glare in response. The Duke counters sharply, asking if the aide would prefer he declare war on the temple instead. Beatrice stands serene and beautiful in a white and blue gown, surrounded by ethereal light and flowers. A sudden crash announces Beatrice's arrival, startling the Duke and his aide, who demand to know how she found them. Beatrice directly asks her father if he intends to send her to the temple, to which he replies that he has devised a sure method to avoid it. A bright, innocent smile spreads across Beatrice's face. The Duke sighs, exasperated, dismissing her notion as preposterous and questioning if she understands what she's proposing. An aide in black reports that the captive fainted during interrogation, and they've managed to glean very little information. Beatrice quietly approaches a stone hallway, observing her father sitting with his two aides in the distance. A dark-haired man begins to sweat, panicking internally about how a little girl found her way into a dungeon during an interrogation. The red-haired man lifts Beatrice into his arms as she lets out a small cry of surprise. As he carries her away, the red-haired man tells Beatrice it's time to leave, but she protests, insisting she needs to speak with the Duke. The Duke shouts angrily, declaring that the dungeon is no place for a child. Gritting his teeth, the Duke orders his men to investigate further and ensure Beatrice rests, striding forward with determination. The red-haired man agrees to the Duke's order, while Beatrice looks up at him with tears welling in her eyes. Walking through a grand hall, the red-haired man tells Beatrice he will summon a physician at once, assuming she is in shock. Beatrice trembles but insists she isn't shaken, leaving the red-haired man completely bewildered by her response. In a flashback, Beatrice recalls asking a man named Ivan about her dismissed nanny, only for her father to punish him harshly, making her realize he was different from her memories. She confesses that despite her resolve, the dungeon was terrifying, and she struggled to maintain a brave face, earning a concerned look from the red-haired man. The red-haired man explains to Beatrice that her father's ambition earned him enemies, a revelation that leaves her asking, what? Beatrice questions this, asking if her father isn't a duke who is esteemed by everyone. The red-haired man quickly retracts his statement, apologizing profusely for speaking out of turn. She earnestly begs him to tell her about her father, explaining that she desperately wants to learn about him. The man introduces himself as Gaston Halosa, revealing that he is speaking against the Duke's direct command out of loyalty. Gaston explains that the Duke made many difficult choices, including one involving a coffin, to protect Beatrice and her brother. He continues, stating the Duke wanted them to be self-reliant for a time when he couldn't be there, shocking Beatrice. Gaston quickly dismisses her concern, telling her it isn't a pressing matter. Beatrice expresses her real concern is about his talk of replacing the high priest. As he kneels, she asks if he was serious. Beatrice gazes forward with quiet determination. Thinking back, Beatrice decides that whatever the reason for her circumstances, she is ultimately glad. As Gaston kneels before her in a divine light, she resolves that she must first convince him to help her. Beatrice questions Gaston about the oracle, which he explains prophesies that the Lady Saint will save the empire. When asked how the saint is chosen, a tearful Gaston reveals that the oracle flower chose her, Lady Beatrice. Beatrice is stunned by the revelation, her hand clutching her chest in surprise. She presses further, asking how the high priest is chosen, and Gaston explains they are simply selected from cardinals, a fact that suddenly horrifies him. Wince, Gaston recoils, asking if she intends to assassinate the high priest and pleading with her not to accumulate such karma. With a sparkle in her eye, Beatrice feels she's being deceived and asks about the scriptures, which state the first high priest possessed godly power. Gaston recalls that those with godly power were wiped out in an ancient war, forcing the temple to select priests from their own ranks. He looks at Beatrice with dawning suspicion, asking if she has found someone who inherited godly power. Her face cast in shadow, Beatrice reveals she learned this information while serving as the Lady Saint in Atlanta. In a flashback, a courtier reports finding a child with godly power, and a blonde noblewoman dashes towards him in excitement. The blonde woman smiles, believing this child may be the key to saving the empire in her place. Swing! She spins around in a beautiful gown, filled with renewed hope, The scene shifts to a grim-faced priest holding a glowing dagger before a large cage containing a hunched figure. The priest scoffs at the idea of hope, sneering that the Lady Saint shouldn't be trying to save a whelp with godly power. Spurt! Splash! Blood erupts from the blonde woman's chest as the narration reveals the high priest killed the child repeatedly to protect his position. In a final memory, the blonde woman stands in a brilliant light over a defeated, kneeling man. Returning to the present, Beatrice tells Gaston she needs him to investigate a certain place for her. Beatrice looks on, with unwavering resolve. Bow. Gaston bows deeply, accepting his lady's command without question. On his mission, a hooded Gaston demands to know where he can find the child with godly power, while a gladiator is defeated with a roar from the crowd. Looking over the arena, Gaston wonders aloud if a boy blessed with godly power is truly there. He clenches his fist in disgust, realizing the arena is still operating by kidnapping people and calling them scum. An announcer whips the crowd into a frenzy, crying, "Yeah!" and "Woohoo!" as he introduces the next fighter, Modify, the executioner. His opponent is revealed to be a small green-haired boy named Finn, the young wraith. Sway. The crowd boos the scrawny boy, jeering that he looks like a twig. Amidst the murmurs, Gaston watches from the stands, convinced the fight will be over quickly. Gleam. Suddenly, his eyes widen in utter shock at something he sees in the arena. Gaston reports to the Duke that he investigated the location Beatrice mentioned and discovered a child with special powers. The Duke dismisses his claim, but Gaston passionately insists the boy is immortal. Gaston recounts the scripture stating that one with godly power becomes the high priest, a power thought to have vanished. He declares that another has now been born, causing the Duke to flinch. The Duke sits in stunned silence, wondering how Beatrice could have possibly known about the boy's existence. Gaston insists they must rescue the potential high priest, adding that Lady Beatrice has yet to manifest her own holy power, which shocks the Duke. Spring. The Duke leaps to his feet, distressed to learn it's true that Triss hasn't manifested her power. Whirl. Grabbing his cloak, the Duke asks if the boy is at the arena and why Gaston is asking. With a cold and menacing glare, the Duke declares that the boy must die. Beatrice gasps, having overheard that her father has gone to the arena. Gaston recalls the Duke's behavior, noting that he seemed frantic, though he couldn't understand why. Beatrice declares she cannot let the innocent child die, secretly resolving that to act freely, she must replace the high priest. A charismatic brown-haired man in a black coat waves with a warm, inviting smile. Gaston stands in shock as he recognizes the brown-haired man, now seated comfortably on a couch. A bruised Gaston frantically whispers to Beatrice, identifying the man as the head of the Guild of Shadows and questioning how they could ever work with him, only for the man to coolly state that he can hear everything. The man from the Guild of Shadows smirks, expressing his skepticism over the existence of a Lady Saint who lacks holy power. Beam. The man pledges his undying loyalty and worship to Beatrice, but she internally dismisses his vow as unbelievable. Quiver. Both Gaston and the guild leader sit beside Beatrice, trembling with comical, glowing devotion. The guild leader muses on the strange circumstances, a powerless Lady Saint, and a newly discovered child with godly power. He tells a confused Beatrice that, given the situation, he can understand the Duke's drastic actions. Revealing a rare book, the man explains he's found an alternative, secret interpretation of the scriptures that only he could acquire. Beatrice questions if the interpretation is unofficial, while Gaston voices his own doubts about its trustworthiness. Flip! The guild leader confidently declares they can verify its truth right at that moment. Beatrice ponders the text, which describes two past saints, one who possessed healing abilities and another who could save people with her blood. Tap. Pointing to the scripture, he explains that no high priest existed when the first saint lived, implying one is only needed when a saint has just a single ability. He concludes that since Beatrice cannot heal, she must possess the power to save others with her blood. Gaston recoils in disbelief, calling the idea of saving people with blood absurd nonsense. Beatrice internally agrees with Gaston that the interpretation is wrong, yet wonders if the man truly believes her blood holds saving power. She sadly recalls her past life, thinking that if she had possessed such power, she would have given every last drop to save the sick. Reach. A hand moves toward a letter opener on a desk, as a voice calls out to the Lady Saint. With the letter opener in hand, Beatrice looks forward with steely resolve. Facing the two men, Beatrice declares her blood holds no power, causing Gaston to panic and shout that she must never reveal such an ability. Whoosh! Gaston urgently warns her not to reveal her power, especially not to a man like the guild leader. Thwack! Thud! Gaston cries out in pain as he is suddenly struck and collapses to the floor. Paralyzed on the ground, Gaston stares in wide-eyed shock, unable to move. Surrounded by a dark aura, the guild leader calls Gaston a fiend and warns him not to interfere. Squeeze! The man's eyes glow red as he grips a cross, declaring this a sacred test. He turns his intense gaze towards Beatrice, calling for the Lady Saint to act. Kneel! The guild leader kneels and presents his wounded hand, asking her to drip her blood on it, while Beatrice inwardly screams in refusal. A brief, serene memory shows a blonde woman from Beatrice's past life smiling gently. The guild leader explains that the sacred texts only record 2 other Lady Saints besides the first. A young blonde man from the past looks disturbed, thinking of blood as a gruesome concept. The story of a past saint is told. She gave her blood to the sick until she died, her body withering away. Drip. An image of an angelic saint contrasts with the skeletal one, as a voice laments that Beatrice isn't as powerful as the first. In a flashback, a young Beatrice timidly apologizes to her father after cutting herself on a broken cup. Chills. The Duke reacts with horror, flinching away and clenching his fist as his young daughter reaches for him. Grab! The Duke violently seizes Beatrice's arm, berating her for her carelessness as a frightened maid rushes in. The Duke issues a series of cold commands. Cancel Beatrice's appointments, remove all sharp objects, and ban her from any dangerous activities. Standing before the family crest, the Duke vows he will not allow House Cumble to be shamed. An aide asks if the order to remove sharp objects includes young Master David's beloved sword. The Duke decides David will stay at the academy, then looms over young Beatrice, demanding she become completely obedient, to which she quietly agrees. In the present, the Duke rides through a storm, regretting his decision to hide Beatrice, and crying out her name in anguish. Hiya! 3 figures gallop on horseback through a snowy forest as the title card for Chapter 21 appears, the Saint reborn as the villain. A close-up reveals Beatrice's sparkling, determined blue eyes. The guild leader concludes the interpretation was wrong, but his eyes gleam as he menacingly suggests they simply need more blood. Icy. A shadowy Gaston intervenes with a single cold command. Enough. Slip. The guild leader calmly moves to stand beside Gaston, both now facing Beatrice. Beatrice asks the 2 men to work with her, and after they pledge their loyalty, she immediately asks Gaston how quickly her father will kill the boy. The Duke and his knights are shown en route to the arena, with the intent of conducting a clean sweep of the illegal operation. The guild leader reveals a complication to Gaston. The arena's master is Baron Kamal, who has powerful political connections. Shove. A brown-haired man pushes a red-haired man's face aside, suggesting their target's assassination may be the enemy's time-consuming plan. Beatrice worries they'll be too late, but a man explains that finding the slaves will take some time. Nod. The brown-haired man states that knowing the slaves' location gives them an advantage, as the red-haired man agrees. Gleam. Beatrice's eyes sparkle with determination as she declares they must leave at once to find her father. Her father is stunned that she intends to accompany them, while Beatrice looks back at him in confusion. In a whimsical scene filled with flowers and bunnies, Beatrice is portrayed as tiny and adorable. Spin. As the men turn to leave, Beatrice protests, but the red-haired man insists she is too young for such danger. Clenching her fists, Beatrice passionately declares she is not just any 10-year-old, but the Oracle's saint. The brown-haired man stifles a laugh at her bold declaration while the red-haired man looks on, utterly shocked. Steam. Beatrice becomes flustered, realizing she can't possibly explain that she has returned from the past. Snicker. Amused, the brown-haired man addresses her as the Oracle's saint and offers to explain a safer course of action. He reveals the first step of his plan. His men will monitor His Grace's movements from the shadows. Meanwhile, Gaston will guide them to the location where the slaves are being held. He then explains that Lady Beatrice's vital role is to mobilize the knights who remain at the estate. Several knights in crisp blue uniforms are shown marching in formation, ready for orders. Beatrice is instructed to go to the arena and create a scene by frantically searching for her father. Annoyed, Beatrice inwardly fumes at the thought of having to search for her father, and that Ivan, The brown-haired man explains that Ivan is the only person who stands a chance of stopping her father. Beatrice despairs, certain the plan will fail because she knows her father will coldly refuse her. A knight with a ponytail suggests Beatrice wait safely at the estate, warning that the arena is too dangerous. With unwavering resolve, Beatrice stares ahead and declares that waiting is the one thing she cannot do. She reflects that her knowledge from 10 years in the future gives her an advantage they cannot match. Believing she has no other option, Beatrice steels herself, acknowledging this is her final resort. Sniffle. The ponytailed knight looks on in concern as Beatrice begins to cry. Tremble. Beatrice puts on an act, claiming she has a terrible feeling that someone is coming to kidnap her. Slump. She feigns despair, insisting she doesn't feel safe anywhere and must stay close to her father. Sniffle. The ponytailed knight continues to watch the distraught young lady with a worried expression. With tears in her eyes, Beatrice begs the good knight to please take her with her. Rah! The scene shifts to a massive, clamoring arena where soldiers are engaged in combat below. Now wearing a dark hood, Beatrice peeks over a balcony, observing the chaotic scene. Lift! The ponytailed knight, also cloaked, lifts Beatrice to give her a better view. Rah! Alerted by a sound, Beatrice looks down from her vantage point with curiosity. She spots a frail, turquoise-haired boy being escorted across the stone floor by 2 guards. Her eyes focus on his distinctive turquoise hair and sapphire eyes, confirming his identity. She recognizes him as a child blessed with immense godly power. Held by her escort, Beatrice wonders why he is here, realizing this isn't the location Gaston mentioned. She points decisively, ordering her escort to change course, which startles the knight. Done. The knight's expression darkens as she suspiciously questions if Beatrice was lying about searching for her father. As a guard below points up and demands to know who they are, Beatrice panics, thinking she's trapped. The knight decides to speak with the guard, but Beatrice sees a perfect opportunity to create a diversion. Shriek. Beatrice lets out a piercing cry of no to draw attention. Clasp. She throws her arms around the knight, falsely claiming the men below remind her of her kidnappers. The approaching guard stops in shock as the knight comforts Beatrice, believing her act. Once on the ground, Beatrice assures the knight she's fine and then calmly asks for her name. The knight introduces herself as Darling Reeve, deputy commander, and invites Beatrice to simply call her Darling. Blink. Beatrice fidgets and insists she only wants to go with Darling, who warns that they're already in trouble. Pop. A nearby cloaked figure interjects, reminding Darling that disobeying Lady Beatrice will lead to severe punishment from the Duke. Beatrice reflects that her father has changed and ordered everyone to obey her, then commands the knights to leave her. The lead knight cheerfully agrees to follow her orders, promising to find his grace and lead the others away. As they leave, Darling leans in close to Beatrice and quietly asks how his grace has changed. A voice observes that while someone remains overprotective, he seems to be trusting Beatrice more lately. The speaker, likely Gaston, thinks of Beatrice's gentle purity, contrasting it with his own simple-minded warrior nature. Held by a hooded Gaston, Beatrice teasingly asks if he just called her father simple-minded. Flustered, Gaston quickly denies it while Beatrice giggles at his panicked reaction. Wish a single shoe flies through the air with surprising speed. Thunk. The projectile strikes a large man squarely in the back of the head. Enraged, the man holds up the shoe and furiously demands to know which dolt threw it. Another man points directly at Beatrice, who is being held by a stunned Gaston, and identifies her as the culprit. As the crowd bellows in anger, Beatrice uses the distraction to dash away from Gaston's arms. Scurry, Beatrice runs off, silently apologizing and declaring her urgent need to find the boy. Burst. She sprints through an open gate, spotting a few figures heading back inside the compound. She watches in dismay as the figures disappear back through the entrance, realizing they are returning inside. Her eyes land on a small wooden cart, sparking a sudden, brilliant idea. With renewed determination, she vows to save the boy, urging him to hold on a little longer. Drip inside a grim cell, a wounded, green-haired boy sits alone and dejected. Drip water trickles over a pale, unmoving hand on the cold stone floor. The boy's weary eyes stare blankly into the oppressive darkness of his cell. Drip! Drip! The sound of water falling into a wooden bucket echoes in the silence. Slump! He collapses, his only thought a desperate wish to die. Crash! The bucket is suddenly kicked over, and the boy looks up with a start. The camera pans back, showing the empty, still cage after the sudden disturbance. Droop. His brief spark of awareness gone, the boy curls into a ball on the floor again. Beatrice stands just outside the bars, her gaze fixed on the broken figure within. She offers a gentle smile, telling the boy she has been looking for him, and inviting him to leave with her. Rummage. She produces a key, announcing that she has found it and her companions are waiting outside. Crossing his arms defiantly, the green-haired boy refuses her offer, stating plainly that he just wants to die. Beatrice stares in horror, utterly shocked by his despairing words. She gently refutes his wish, insisting he secretly wants to live a happier life. Recalling her own struggles, she speaks of hope, but the boy lashes out, questioning her talk of happiness and accusing her of being one of his tormentors. Consumed by a cold fury, he vows to kill every last one of the people who wronged him. Beatrice watches him impassively and gives him a simple, chilling instruction. Go on ahead. Shaw. Appearing with ethereal dark wings, Beatrice encourages his anger, telling him not to forgive his tormentors as she recalls her own shattered hopes. Her eyes burn with intensity as she embraces her new chance to live for revenge, refusing to let it go. The green-haired boy is left speechless, staring at her with wide, astonished eyes. Holding up the key, Beatrice asks for his name, and he quietly introduces himself as Finn. Creak. As she unlocks the gate, she introduces herself as Beatrice and formally offers to help him achieve his revenge. Finn questions if living for revenge is truly possible, while Beatrice smiles, thinking she's never felt so alive. Wish. A menacing, shadowy figure with glowing eyes raises a sword, preparing to strike them down. The hooded swordsman looms over Beatrice, his blade poised to attack. Slash. The sound of a sword cutting swiftly through the air fills the corridor. Thud! Finn cries out as he collapses to the ground, having been struck from behind. Flash! A brilliant blue light erupts from the wound on Finn's back as his power instantly heals him. Swish. Revealing himself to be the Duke, Beatrice's father stands with his sword drawn, confirming the boy's immortality is real. With a grim expression, the Duke declares that a child with such power cannot be allowed to live. Lunge! Beatrice throws herself forward, desperately screaming for her father to stop. Flinch. The Duke pulls back in shock as his daughter grabs his arm, crying out her name. Triss! Clatter. Startled by her intervention, the Duke drops his golden sword. He looks at Beatrice with alarm, warning her that it's dangerous to interfere. Dash. 3 robed figures, likely Gaston and the guild leader, rush toward the scene, calling out for their lady. Shout Finn panics, shouting, "What is this mess?" as a woman with gray hair thinks they are doomed. An older man demands an explanation as Beatrice, looking small and frightened, says she came looking for her father because she was scared. The man, her father, questions her reason for being scared. The gray-haired woman explains that Lady Beatrice has been very anxious since her kidnapping. She adds that Beatrice is especially anxious when her father is out of sight, a statement that surprises him. The woman concludes that Beatrice's anxiety stems from her deep trust in him, leaving the man stunned. Whimper. With wide, innocent eyes, Beatrice looks up, reinforcing the woman's claim. Gasp! Her father accepts the explanation, as 3 hooded figures in the background react with shock. Flustered, the father wonders how he accepted it so easily, while a hooded man silences another. He then grimly thinks, however. The gray-haired woman recalls a memory of a captive Finn, grimly certain that the boy is still going to die. Beatrice steps protectively in front of the woman and yells, "Number!" She passionately defends Finn, declaring he's done nothing wrong and she won't let him suffer anymore. The father furiously demands to know why she is defending Finn, warning her of the consequences if he lives. He warns that if Finn survives, he will end up as a useless, dried-up husk. He cannot live, the father declares, ordering Beatrice to go home and affirming his decision is final. A hooded man attempts to reason with him, but the father menacingly asks when his followers started questioning his authority. With a terrifying glare, he reminds them their job is to follow orders, not to think, and demands their obedience. They quickly agree. Salute. The 3 hooded figures bow in submission to his command. The gray-haired woman tries to escort Beatrice home, but the girl struggles, crying out in protest. Beatrice wonders why her father wants to kill Finn as a red-haired man appears, ordering her to stop and wondering if something else is at play. An open book appears, symbolizing a search for an answer or a deeper truth. As the father stands among flowers, the red-haired man wonders if his grace is actually worried about him. Dash! The red-haired man runs after the father, promising to explain everything, as a scarred man orders his men to remove Beatrice and a dead body. The red-haired man confronts the father, and the two stand face to face in a tense standoff. The red-haired man reveals the two types of holy power, healing and blood, and realizes the father already knew and suspected Beatrice was a blood lady saint. With a sharp gaze, the red-haired man questions the father's reasoning. Done. He reassures the father that Beatrice's blood showed no power, a revelation that leaves the man stunned. The red-haired man confirms Beatrice seems to possess no holy powers, but warns that some at the temple are already threatening her life. He argues that they must make Finn the high priest to protect the powerless Beatrice from mistreatment and malicious rumors within the temple. The plan is to have Finn invoke a divine law to seal his own power, thus ensuring no one doubts Beatrice. The father, however, questions if Finn will cooperate. The red-haired man coldly suggests they can torture Finn into compliance if he refuses. The memory of Finn's determined gaze as he looked at Beatrice flashes by. A stained glass window illustrates the prophecy of a new Lady Saint and High Priest appearing simultaneously. The unprecedented news spreads through Atlanta, and a crier announces the temple has summoned both Finn and Beatrice. Their summons is officially for the purpose of preparing for their coronation. Beatrice reflects that as the day of their departure neared, she felt intense stares on her for minutes at a time. She realizes the burning stares are coming from Finn, who stands watching her from a doorway. Beatrice turns to a silent Finn and asks, "What's wrong?" She inwardly notes how lovely he is without the filth, thinking he looks like a girl. Shaken, Finn declares he needs to speak with her. Finn reveals that the Duke informed him of their plan to use the divine law. Realizing Gaston told him, Beatrice asks what happened next, and Finn's expression turns icy cold. He asks with cold fury if they intend to use the divine law for her sake. Beatrice looks up, startled by the intensity of his question. Finn furiously rejects the idea of becoming high priest, declaring he never asked to be saved and that she will only. She then gives him permission to use the divine law in any way he wishes. Finn is left speechless and confused by her unexpected compliance. He expresses concern, warning her that she will be in a difficult position if he doesn't use the divine law as planned. Seated gracefully amidst a cascade of flowers, Beatrice smiles and warmly reassures him that she has no desire to use him. The gray-haired man nervously asks if there's another way, but Beatrice replies that she'll have to think about it. Beatrice internally worries that if she doesn't use the divine law, the man she's with might get hurt. The gray-haired man looks thoughtful, struggling to find the right words to say. Flinch. Both Beatrice and the gray-haired man are startled by a sudden realization. Confused, Beatrice looks up with wide, questioning eyes. The gray-haired man smiles with a slight blush, trying to explain his feelings. Giggle. Amused, Beatrice advises him not to simply follow orders all the time. She encourages him to follow his own will, leaving him looking touched by her words. In a memory, the gray-haired man asks why she saved him, and Beatrice warmly replies that she just wanted him to be happy. He looks at her intently, questioning if that was her only reason. In a tender moment, Beatrice places her palm against his, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Beatrice reflects with a small smile that he seems prickly on the outside, but is actually quite needy. Ow! Her fond memory is shattered as she panics, crying out that she completely forgot about Kale. Snapping back to the present, Beatrice urgently tells the gray-haired man she has to meet someone, surprising him. As she clarifies that she must leave tomorrow, he asks if she'll depart at night, and she realizes how late it is. Beatrice gazes at the moonlit sky, accepting that their separation may be inevitable, but holding onto a sliver of hope. Cough. The scene shifts to a pale young boy, Kale, coughing weakly into his hand. A maid brings a tray to the bedridden prince, asking with concern if he is all right. Kale sadly recalls parting from Beatrice, reflecting that he hasn't seen her since she left. The maid listens sympathetically, as Kale quietly admits that he misses Triss. Kale reassures his confused maid that everything is fine, though his expression remains somber. The maid beams, delivering the news that Lady Beatrice is the oracle's saint and that the king has decreed Kale will marry her. Stunned and overjoyed, Kale's eyes fill with sparkling excitement at the thought of marrying her. Cough. His excitement triggers a coughing fit, as he eagerly asks the maid if the news is really true. brush, the maid gently strokes his hair to calm him, confirming the engagement and telling him not to worry. Despite the maid's reassurances, a dark thought suggests that the two of them can never be together. A stern, black-haired priest confronts Kale, accusing him of feigning illness to skip his theology lesson. The priest coldly informs Kale that he will ensure he makes up for all the studies he missed. Observing the prince's unhappy expression, the priest points out his displeasure. The priest lectures Kale on his royal duties, warning that his current actions could lead to the empire's downfall. He cruelly berates the boy, predicting he'll be remembered as an incompetent king and a worthless shadow of his father. Squeeze. With a clenched fist, the priest venomously calls Prince Kael'veth a defective product. Leaning in close, the priest whispers that even the Lady Saint is unhappy with the engagement, as a dark aura emanates from him. Kale wonders sadly if Triss is truly unhappy with him, resigning himself to the idea that some people must part ways. Tap tap. Standing by the window at night, Kale worries that Triss was trying to tell him she dislikes him. Creak! As he opens the window, a dark bird lands on the sill with a flutter of wings. Crinkle, Kale, now wearing a mask, carefully opens a letter delivered by the mysterious bird. He reads Beatrice's letter in a mirror's reflection. She apologizes for leaving without saying goodbye, but promises not to forget him. Kale looks down, his expression unreadable as he absorbs her heartfelt words. The letter explains that her messages will be delivered by bird, and the messenger waits patiently on the windowsill. Clutch. Overwhelmed with emotion and surrounded by an aura of purple roses, Kale clutches the letter to his heart, whispering her name. Tears of relief and sorrow stream from his eyes as he processes her promise. Wipe, wipe. He cleans the window, telling himself that as long as she doesn't forget him, nothing else matters. On a bright, snowy morning, the day arrives for Beatrice to leave for the temple. Dun dun. Magnificent carriage, drawn by 4 white horses, arrives to escort the new Lady Saint. Murmur. A large contingent of knights in crisp blue uniforms stands assembled, their whispers filling the air. Dressed in a new formal uniform, Beatrice observes the knights, appreciating the great effort made for her departure. Darling Reeve formally greets Beatrice, who recognizes her deputy commander with a look of surprise. Darling announces she will now be Beatrice's personal escort, which confuses Beatrice since she will be living in the temple. Darling smiles and clarifies that not just her, but all the knights assembled before them are now her official escort. A stunned Beatrice shouts in disbelief at the surprising announcement. She looks out at the massive formation of knights assembled just for her. Lean. Darling explains that they were given special instructions directly from the Duke. Darling looks seriously at Beatrice while confirming the Duke's orders. Flustered, Beatrice insists that such an extensive escort is unnecessary for her safety. Darling dismissively questions Beatrice's idea of such lengths. A blond man in a formal uniform, her father, questions how they can possibly trust the people at the temple. Gasp! As Darling salutes, the Duke declares he won't send her to wolves without precautions, shocking Beatrice. Whirl! Thrown off balance by her father's sudden movement, Beatrice stammers in confusion. In a snowy forest at dusk, a knight announces that they will rest here for now. Resting on a log, Beatrice asks if they've arrived, but the gray-haired man says the journey to Atlanta takes time. The gray-haired man sighs, explaining they still have another 2 days of travel ahead. From a distance, she and the gray-haired man watch her father conversing with his knights. She reflects that her father's concern seems genuine, not just for when he needs her. Seeing his emotional expression, she feels a pang in her heart. Her sapphire eye glints with determination. Noticing her pensive mood, the gray-haired man sits beside her and asks if something is bothering her. Sigh. Whirl. She turns away, asking if he enjoys making people worry, which startles him. Angrily, she recalls him saying he didn't want her to get hurt and asks if he's the meddling type, calling him Finn for the first time. Crackle. An intense, chibi-style stare-down ensues between Beatrice and Finn, sparks flying between them. Spring. Beatrice stands up, suggesting that while they must cooperate, a little distance might be for the best. HMPH, she asks for space and walks off, ignoring Finn's warning that it's dangerous to stray too far. Crunch! Walking away through the snow, she congratulates herself on making a natural escape. Her thoughts then drift to Ivan, suddenly recalling he had something important to tell her. She dismisses an approaching knight, asking to be left alone to think, assuming it's just another escort. Flinch. She's startled when a familiar voice asks if he should tell her his news another time. A man in a knight's uniform greets her, and she recognizes him as Ivan, asking if he's in disguise. Ivan jokes about joining the knights, but Beatrice impatiently asks if he delivered her letter to Kale. He confirms the letter was delivered and tells her not to worry, then asks with concern if she is all right. Ivan reveals he heard someone from the temple is threatening her, but she calmly dismisses his concern. He pushes further, asking if her nonchalance holds, even if the threat is a powerful cardinal, which shocks her. He explains their investigation into the kidnapper's payment led them to a single item that couldn't be laundered. The item was traced to a temple offering, and after investigating everyone with access, they ruled out any lower-level culprits. Their investigation then shifted to high-ranking officials who left the temple before kidnapping, prompting Beatrice to ask if it led to a cardinal. Ivan confirms there are 5 cardinals in total, and 4 of them have acted suspiciously. He then adds a crucial lead. The girl she's seeking, Lena, may have entered the cloistered abbey. The cloistered abbey is revealed to be a place of total devotion, a sanctuary where people are locked away from the world forever. Ivan concludes her kidnapping was likely to get Lena into the abbey, as a child cannot enter without a cardinal's recommendation. Beatrice commends Ivan's good intuition, and he maintains a serious expression. Chills run down her spine as she imagines a devious young girl orchestrating her murder simply to escape the abbey. Clenching her fist, Beatrice vows that if she uncovers their plot, the punishment will be far more severe than a simple reprimand. Wham! The scene shifts to a dark room where someone kicks a wall in frustration over their wretched confinement. A furious, black-haired girl smashes a bowl, screaming that she never wanted to be treated this way. Crash! A hooded figure orders the girl to quiet her vulgar mouth in a place of worship, but she retorts that her obedience has changed nothing. The hooded figure internally laments getting caught, then questions whether the other girl can truly be trusted as the Lady Saint. The hooded figure addresses the furious girl, calling her by name Irina. Grit, with a burning gaze, Irina venomously asks how he dares to doubt her. Quoting scripture, Irina defines the Lady Saint as one who serves the lowliest, a point the hooded figure seems to concede. Step. Irina approaches him, blaming the false Lady Saint for the oracle flower's early bloom, and warning him of what will happen if he fails to help her. She describes a gruesome vision of torture for a man named Agato Abraxas, promising a voice will whisper to him as he suffers. Bam! A blue-haired girl smiles, relieved that her brother has finally returned. In a past memory, a young girl with brown hair looks up at a man who clenches his fist, telling her he won't doubt her, but she must prove her worth. Smirk. The girl's eyes glow a menacing red as she agrees, her expression disturbingly cheerful. In the present, Beatrice arrives somewhere with the green-haired guild leader, both now in formal attire. Beatrice's eyes widen in awe as she looks upon the scene before her, thinking, She is staring at a magnificent and pristine white cathedral, shimmering in the sunlight. Clatter! A brown-haired man in a blue uniform offers her a tour of the temple as the guild leader glances at him. March! A stern, blonde-haired priest stops them, declaring that soldiers are not permitted to enter the temple in large groups. Brush. The brown-haired escort walks past the priest, offering a formal welcome as a man with a ponytail looks on anxiously. The priest kneels respectfully, formally addressing Beatrice as the oracle's saint. Kneel! The priest and his men pledge to be her escorts, causing Beatrice to wonder how they know of Finn. Beatrice reflects on the unexpectedly peaceful reception, having anticipated a conflict with the high priest. Elsewhere, Duke Cumble stands with Gaston, firmly stating he has no intention of sending Beatrice in alone and distrusts the temple. Bow. The blonde priest from before respectfully greets Duke Cumble, surprising Beatrice, who realizes they have met before. The priest corrects the Duke, asserting that Beatrice is now the Lady Saint of the Empire and must follow the temple's precepts. The Duke flatly refuses, declaring his distrust and insisting the Cumble Knights will protect his daughter. An unseen person wearing white lace boots states that concern for the Lady Saint's safety is unnecessary. 2 veiled figures are revealed as the ones who guard the Lady Saint, with one introduced as the Right Angel, Avarim. A red-haired knight questions their ability to protect her, but another man calls him a fool, creating a tense conflict that Beatrice decides to stop. Mutter. One of the veiled guardians sighs that this is a nuisance, while holding a few small stones. Raise! The guardian announces for everyone to watch closely and raises her hand. Wish! She suddenly throws the stones at her companion, horrifying the nearby priest. Crackle! A voice cries out, Beatrice! As a powerful blue shield erupts around her, deflecting the projectiles. A sizzling energy field, emanating from the guild leader, envelops Beatrice while her father's shocked knights look on. Beatrice stands serenely within a floral aura, untouched by the chaos. Shing! The Duke's knights draw their swords on the veiled guardians, one of whom grits her teeth and calls them fools before being silenced. With a stern look, Beatrice orders them to stop. Flinch. At her command, the knights immediately lower their swords. Beatrice scolds the veiled guardian, Saintess, for her reckless display, though the Duke fumes silently, despite being told Beatrice is fine. A shimmering, transparent shield is explained to be a reflexive power that protects the Lady Saint from danger. This power, known as the Angel's Shield, is shown as one of the guardians looks on with determined golden eyes. The first condition for the shield is explained. The Lady Saint must remain within her guardian's sight. The shield's power is tied to the guardian's holy power and unwavering faith in the saint. Beatrice understands now that the shield which once protected her must have disappeared when the second oracle flower bloomed, signaling a loss of faith. Beam. To break the tension, Beatrice cheerfully suggests her father join her on a tour of the temple. She quickly changes her mind, volunteering a startled Saintess to be the tour guide instead. The Duke dismisses the tour, declaring that his daughter Triss must rest, and that he will personally inspect her chambers. Beatrice is awestruck by her father's protective demeanor. Shalala. They enter an incredibly lavish and sparkling suite. Amazed, Beatrice notes she never received such chambers until she was 16, but her father scoffs that House Cumble would have prepared better. He offers to use all his power to remove her from the temple if she wishes to leave. Beatrice turns to face her father, addressing him formally as, Your Grace. She states that becoming the Lady Saint is the best path to fulfilling his command for her to become Crown Princess. While brushing her long blonde hair, she vows to elevate the status of House Cumble. In a flashback, a previous mature Lady Saint with white roses in her hair is seen. The previous saint is shown in an elegant close-up, remembered as someone beyond reach. In the memory, a young nun named Belle offers the radiant Lady Saint Hilde another adornment for her feast day. Shove! Two nuns bicker over whether the saint should look radiant or simple for the faithful, and as the saint watches them joyfully, her hand freezes. A priestess protests that the Lady Saint should be praying before the festival, not attending meetings, but another priestess cautions her. With an icy glare, Beatrice silences the priestesses, and one nervously apologizes, promising to bring what was requested at once. Sigh. Beatrice lets out a weary sigh, clearly exhausted by the temple's rigid protocols. Looking over her shoulder, she pointedly asks someone if they must maintain such strict discipline. Finn, now high priest, lounges smugly, reminding her she vouched for her knight's trustworthiness before asking why she's idling. Yawning, Beatrice retorts she was up all night memorizing a speech. Beatrice teasingly compliments Finn on becoming a proper high priest, noting how different he is now. The two sit together on a bench, continuing their quiet conversation in the grand hall. Beatrice praises Finn for doing a better job than she expected, but he defensively tells her not to treat him like a child, reminding her that she's younger. As Beatrice stands and walks away, a pensive Finn begins to speak. With a confident and slightly menacing smile, Beatrice declares that she is trying to save them. An ornate, framed image depicts the revered Lady Saint Hilde in a moment of prayer. Beatrice reflects that in her past life, she prayed sincerely on the feast day of Hilde's death, but today she will pray for someone else. She enters a formal sitting room, approaching two couples who are waiting anxiously for her audience. The faces of the waiting couples are shown, an older, stern-looking pair and a younger, visibly distressed one. Surrounded by a cascade of red roses, Beatrice formally greets the assembled nobles as children of God. Seated gracefully, she expresses her hope that they have all spent their time in divine contemplation. A woman from the younger couple confirms they have, then nervously asks how many indulgences will be granted this month. The older woman chastises the younger for her impolite question, but the younger man argues it's what they're all thinking. Kneeling before Beatrice, the younger woman formally requests abundant blessings for the month ahead. Beatrice offers a bright, disarming smile, framed by delicate flowers. A document explains that indulgences are sacred papers meant to absolve the sins of the living and the dead. As the text describes the cleansing power of indulgences, Beatrice internally scoffs that it's a blatant lie designed to swindle nobles out of their money. Beatrice invites them to confess their sins one by one so she can assess their gravity. A nobleman admits he failed to pay his tenant farmers, but Beatrice's internal voice ominously declares that God says he has committed other sins as well. Her eyes glowing with divine authority, Beatrice commands the terrified man to confess all of his transgressions. The nobleman, Viscount Hevelon, breaks down and confesses that he kidnapped a tenant farmer's daughter and made her his concubine. A narrative card reveals the Viscount is a provincial noble who traveled to the capital specifically to purchase an indulgence from her. Beatrice recalls that his sins don't end there and that the woman is likely already dead. In her past life, the woman's father was executed for attempting to avenge her. The tragic memory concludes with the father being sentenced to death for his failed attack on the noble. She silently taunts the Viscount, questioning if he truly feels guilt and if buying a piece of paper can atone for his crimes. A hand looms over the kneeling Viscount as a voice promises he will face divine retribution. Stunned, the Viscount watches Beatrice present his offering of gold as proof of his faith. He tries to deny his sin, but she challenges him to swear his innocence before God. Done. Their eyes meet in a tense standoff. Beatrice is filled with cold judgment, the Viscount's wide with fear. Spring! The Viscount leaps to his feet, denouncing the indulgence as a fraudulent lie and complaining about the exorbitant price. Pointing accusingly, he dares a lightning bolt to strike him down, if any of it is real. The scene transitions, showing Beatrice watching calmly as the commotion unfolds. The next day, newspaper clippings report Viscount Hevelon's death in a carriage accident during a storm, hailing it as divine retribution and noting the woman he wronged is now safe. Holding the report, Beatrice instructs someone to distribute it across the empire to reinforce belief in divine judgment. She then tells Ivan that she will inform the nobles about his indulgences. Standing behind her, Ivan reassures her he will handle it discreetly, as always. Ivan praises Beatrice for her accomplishments over the years, judging the wicked while simultaneously making a fortune. He playfully suggests he would have offered her money instead of his services had he known her fondness for riches, but she curtly dismisses his nonsense. A chibi Ivan complains that disposing of the Viscount and staging the carriage accident was no easy task. With a sinister smile, Ivan asks Beatrice which sinner's judgment they should deliver this month. He places his hands on her shoulders, instructing her to keep an eye on Baroness Pale, his next target. Beatrice's eyes widen in shock at the mention of the Baroness. In a cute chibi fantasy, Ivan playfully offers to pass judgment on the Baroness, but a flustered Beatrice quickly objects. Beatrice reveals that Baroness Pale had recently visited her guild. Ivan recalls the visit, noting the Baroness seemed to have a request, but ultimately left without saying a word. Beatrice reflects that no matter a client's rank, the filthy work her guild undertakes remains the same. Beatrice clarifies to Ivan that the Baroness needed an indulgence, not judgment. Ivan offers a slight, knowing smile, seemingly amused by her statement. Straightening his collar with a confident smirk, Ivan asks if she believes he has the power to grant one. Beatrice counters, asking if he believes she has such power, and a voice affirms her divine authority as the Lady Saint. The scene shifts to a quiet moment, with Beatrice thoughtfully sipping tea. Finn questions her need for money, suggesting she, as a lady of House Cumble, could simply ask the Duke. Seated across from her in a lavish hall, Finn presses further, asking why she needs the funds. Beatrice declares her purpose is to heal the Empire's people, a statement Finn questions with skepticism. As she turns to leave, a frustrated Finn demands to know why she's hiding her plans from him when he wants to help. Pausing, Beatrice looks back at him with surprise, asking what he means. She reassures a glowing, saint-like vision of Finn that she always relies on his help. Plop. Finn sighs and sits down, as Beatrice reflects that he must have found the temple's rules and intensive training overwhelming. A memory shows Finn, now a high priest, enduring his training and bestowing a blessing, having overcome the challenges remarkably well. Beatrice smiles warmly, touched by his earnest desire to help her. Beam! She gives Finn a radiant smile, thinking how glad she is to have met him, which leaves him slightly stunned. The two stand together, their expressions turning serious as they look ahead. A young white-haired girl and a tall white-haired man appear, questioned by an unseen person about their absence from the feast day celebrations. Finn smirks, remarking that the Lady Saint was praying over holy water and that the left angel's eyes seemed to wander. Ooh! The white-haired girl whirls around furiously, demanding to know who he is accusing of being distracted. Beatrice observes the unfolding drama with a sweet, knowing smile. Fuming, the tall man complains they should have been informed, but Beatrice calmly promises to tell them next time. Another white-haired woman with a veil complains about empty promises, but a veiled figure beside her silences her with a sharp, "Enough!" Beatrice sadly reflects that she will likely never grow close to them in this life either. She thinks about the distance between them, noting that they are uncomfortable around her, though a woman named Avarim pretends otherwise. A dark vision of her past self with blood-smeared eyes flashes through her mind as she fears they know she's a false saint. Finn's voice calling her name snaps her out of it. Finn asks Beatrice what she plans to do, and she responds, asking what he means. He clarifies he's talking about the upcoming hunting tournament, which surprises Beatrice. She quickly announces it's time for them both to leave. Lounging on a sofa, Finn explains that since it's a temple event, he's curious where she, as Triss, intends to sit. Beatrice's eye widens in sudden realization. The history of the tournament is explained. St. Hilde established a tradition that now involves a tense political balance between the nobles, the imperial family, and the temple. Finn appears worried, asking if she couldn't just sit with the temple officials, the nobles, or even the imperial family. A cute chibi Beatrice looks bewildered, wondering if that's an option, as she recalls always sitting with the temple delegation in her past life. Leaning closer, Finn informs her that his father sent him a letter. Beatrice recoils, exclaiming that his father already makes her uncomfortable, a reaction that seems to confuse Finn. A drop of sweat forms on her cheek as she recalls a menacing image of Finn's father. Finn relays his father's command. She is to sit with the nobles, as he will be with the temple delegation. Shocked by the directive, Beatrice asserts that she can and will choose her own place. Slump. A defeated Finn slumps onto the sofa, sighing as he thinks that his father isn't threatening her for the reason she might think. Beatrice weighs her options, realizing she must sit with the nobles to prove herself to House Cumble, even though her estranged father will be there. She considers that sitting with the temple would be safer, but hesitates, knowing there's more at stake. Her thoughts drift to Kale, the young emperor she kept at a distance. Despite sending him letters through Ivan, she never received a single reply. Knock, knock. As she concludes that Kale has no feelings for her, an interruption at the door prompts Finn to say, "Come in." A nun announces a visitor for the Lady Saint, Crown Prince Kael'veth, leaving both Beatrice and Finn in stunned silence.